Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll call this meeting to order. Regular meeting of the Board of Education of August 25th, 2026. With us here tonight, we have Mrs. Bardenwerper, Mr. Lee, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, myself, Ms. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Krasnov, and Superintendent Tostani. If everyone could please rise for the pledge. Of the United States of America. Sure. Mr. Testani would like to get us started.
I'd just like, as we start our first meeting, I'd just like to introduce and welcome to all of you, Mr. Eric Amato Jr., our new Executive Director of Human Resources. So as you see the new face in the crowd, you'll get to see and interact with Eric more as we get through the year. But I just wanted to introduce him to all of you as we start the first meeting.
Thank you and welcome. With that, we will move to public comment. If any members of the public would like to come up and speak. Seeing none, we will move on. There are no presentations or consent calendar items, so we'll move right to old business. Item 6A, approval of curriculum changes. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the curriculum changes per enclosures numbers 1, 2, and 3. If I can have a motion, please, made by Mrs. Bardenwerper, seconded by Mr. Krasnov. And so with that, I don't know if anybody would like to, or Mr. Tostani, if you'd like to speak to the changes that we received in our enclosures, or if a member of your staff will.
Dr. Zavajancic is here with us tonight, and he is coming up to the podium as we speak. Or the microphone, rather.
Good evening, James Zavajancic, Chief Academic Officer. The majority of the documents that were before you at the end of June of the last school year are still intact. The three memos you have, the first one are edits. The vast majority of them are technical edits, grammatical or spelling or font and capitalizations. The second memo is the feedback document, question and answers. So this went out at the end of June, and a few members placed some questions, comments, and feedback for us, and the responses are provided within. And then the final memo is from Ms. Goss about edits to the ELA 6-8 documents. Specifically, many of them were about bifurcating the changes of the text into grade level versus challenging text in the documents. And then again, there were some technical edits there as well. Just to remind the public, the elementary curriculum came forth in June as a result of the edits to the elementary schedule with STEAM switching over or not being taught as a separate class. Some of the science standards had to go back to the science curriculum. The library media curriculum took some of the STEAM standards as well, specifically the coding ones, and we wanted to make sure those edits were ready to go and in the curriculum for the upcoming school year so that we weren't missing them. With that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, any questions from the board? Mrs. Jacobson.
I just wanted to thank, I had meetings on some of these and it submitted quite a number of questions to staff on it, and I wanted to thank everyone for taking the time to respond to those. It was helpful on both endeavors. Thank you very much for that. And then the question to the chair is, I'll let other people, if they have other questions on this, but just the way it is worded, just to be clear, it's library, media, math, science, and the middle school ELA in one motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'll let everybody ask other questions, but wanted to float the idea of separating these out if possible. But I'll wait until the discussion ensues in case that is a possibility through you.
Okay. Other questions? I have one just as a follow-up to my question regarding the library as a source of an assured experience for presenting. And I appreciate the response I got, which is that yes, presenting does take place, so that whenever we've heard a comment that my child did not ever present something until the invention convention. Staff would indicate, yes, that there have been experiences for that. I guess my only question is that, is there any time when it's an assured experience where across the grade we know that every first grader is presenting on a favorite animal? I'm trying to remember what my kids did and I can't. But that was kind of what I was looking for, was something that, again, across our 11 schools was assured. So I turn.
Hit the,
Just make sure it's on.
Okay. So,
And if you could introduce yourself.
I'm Claire Staffstrom. I'm Library Media Specialist at Holland Hill, and I'm the liaison for the elementary school librarians. So, I think that you are thinking about a library presentation that to the parents, like that, and that is sort of the presentation that happened in yesteryears, and that was amazing. And they were, when the library program was collaborative, and there was big presentations that all the parents would come in. That the library program is still totally robust, but it just has changed because it is, it's happening within the cycle. It happens not collaboratively. Always we do collaborate with teachers, but not during library learning time. So the children, yes, they do present, but it's usually within our classroom.
So no question, I'm sure that parents they can disrupt a day. It takes up more time. Totally understand that
Right.
things change. But again, I was still looking for that idea of an assured experience.
Well, there are lessons that happen at the end of the lesson, like for instance, in the third unit, in most of the in all of the grades, there's a research unit. So the students all research and they all share. That share out looks different. It's not, necessarily a formal presentation where a student gets up individually. It could be that they're in a circle and they all share a script, or they talk about an animal that they learned about. But there are share outs throughout each of the units, especially the third and the fourth units.
Ms. Maxon Kennelly, I guess I would say that there are presentations in the elementary school.
Right.
Can I point to a specific spot in the library media that says this is a parent-invited event presentation? The answer to that is no, as an assured experience. We would say, however, that there is work that happens outside of curriculum with the department. I should say departments, not specifically library media, on implementation that occurs. So you might not see it in a public-facing document, but presentations do occur in K through 5 in many disciplines, but they're not what you're thinking in terms of where you can point to it as a specific unit.
And I'm happy to move on. But for the rest of the board, if you want to see what I'm talking about, in enclosure 2 on the last page, again, it's not the parent part that was my hang up. It was that with all of these verbs of organize, synthesize, create, collaborate, use, nowhere did it talk about the product of presenting. That is my only point, that I was looking to see that included. But it is certainly not going to, I guess I accept that that is the implicit step. I was just looking to see that included, but it's certainly not a reason I'd be voting against the curriculum. So
Okay.
thank you very much.
Yep.
Mr. Krasnov?
Sorry. I believe sometimes it's not just being presented to their immediate peers, right? Sometimes other grades may come in and see the presentation. So it's more a school experience, maybe not parent experience.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
Can I,
No? Mrs. Jacobson?
just on, now that you're sitting there, for library media, and I understand this is a result of a scheduling change in terms of the reductions in some of the new classes and content in library media, in order to add the 30 classes of coding to that. Previously, when we adopted the library media curriculum, I had asked the question about how much time, relatively speaking, on basis, and you said roughly 50%. With these additional 30 classes K-5, what does that take that up to?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again for me?
I would say it doesn't take it up anywhere because the
Okay.
reduction was technology. So it was a one-to-one swap.
So the research process was all technology based?
No, so if the classes that were taken out, we didn't add any more technology. The classes that were taken out were tech, the tech product. For instance, in the third unit and most of the grades, there was they did research and then they created a technology product that was taken out. So we didn't add any more technology in with the coding. So it was swapped. So there's no additional technology in any of the grades.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Flynn?
Just a little bit of a follow-up on that. As you guys have been discussing coding specific, it's kind of an interesting time for this to be coming up, especially with like a little bit of it was used in here, so I'm going to use it like a stopgap of a curriculum. Obviously, we're in the middle of building science, we're in the middle of a lot of new things. AI is on the front. And I'm not asking anyone to like stay in the moment, but as we're looking at this curriculum now and we're adding in code, like, was there any discussion at all as this has trickled on? Maybe, like I said, this is like happened over the last 2 months. Google
It's-
has changed things are just shifting. So just curious your perspective.
I would say it's an interesting question because this came, to your point, as a result of STEAM not being a regular class. Library, to be transparent, the library team did not ask to have coding placed in their curriculum, quite frankly. And I think they would have been perfectly happy with leaving the curriculum as it was presented and approved. I think it was last year. We heard the comments that were made when STEAM was being shifted from the public that things were going to be lost, perhaps. And we wanted to make sure that things were not lost. And we took that feedback and placed it in the places of the curriculum where it was most necessary. So library, again, didn't do this on their own volition. Ms. Safstrom wouldn't be sitting here, but for the fact that it was something that was asked for across the line.
And part of the reason I ask is this has been discussed at curriculum committee and at this table that the timeline for just the curriculum committee is long. That 10 years is long. So like, I think it's further data that like, this is a long stretch to think that any curriculum is going to stand for 10 years in the world we live in right now. So I'm just trying to point it out, not to point out a problem, but point out problems that you guys are having to deal with that we have to be aware of too as we're moving through this.
Our
It's just not-
curriculum is pretty solid and is really solid. And I feel like, if we just based on what we have in the curriculum, if we need to implement it a little bit differently to change with the times, we can.
Thank you.
Sure, Ms. Jacobson?
Based on that comment, knowing that we just approved this curriculum, and it's gonna stand for 10 years. I'm not sure how to ask this question. Is library media something that we should be considering doing on a much faster cycle? Considering it's not the yesteryear, of going and getting books and like you said, and that it is 50% really technology based and the digital citizenship components of that curriculum. And with the pace of which those things change, I just can't imagine this curriculum actually standing for 10 years.
I think to answer your question, Mrs. Jacobson, we may want to consider looking at all our subject area curriculums.
And some of them
consider-
might be like 7 or 8, but this one might be like 3 to 5. Like,
Yeah,
and I hear you on
Yeah.
all of them. Certainly happy to have that conversation.
sure.
Those are a little bit different because it's aligned with state standards and
Yep.
when they update their standards, right? Things like that. So that's a little bit more technical, but this one, open to hearing about all of them coming faster to us. But this one just seems like something, we might want to think of on a and I'm just throwing that out there right now because I just can't imagine adopting this tonight and letting this sit for 10 years.
I think getting some feedback from Ms. Staffstrom, sometime later in the late spring, on what she's thinking in terms of how the year went. And if we need to take a look at it much sooner would be very helpful because I think her level of expertise here will be very valuable.
Thank you.
And just as one quick follow-up, just repeating for the board, is that I think staff, correct me if I'm wrong, always feel comfortable bringing us a new course, bringing us a revision, bringing us that mid-time update where there are frequently some significant changes, full year art courses becoming half-year courses. And that schedule that's in our budget book is not a voting item. It's an indication of the plan. But I just to Mrs. Jacobson's point, I agree that obviously anything can be sped up. On the other hand, if that schedule ever started to get put off, that's what I think this board at least, would not look favorably upon. And that's why we like to have that scheduled to have certain expectations. But thank you. Mr. Krasnov.
Just to follow up on that, we've had a bunch of discussions in the curriculum committee meetings about that point, that there's times where certain curriculums may need to come forward or be adjusted going forward. The timeline may need to change. Now, obviously, it was brought to our attention that especially some of the larger curriculums, it's really hard to change the schedule too much. But with some of the one-offs or some additions, or even asking to possibly move forward certain grades, which we may be hearing about at some point, all these things are things that we're encouraging now to be practiced versus in the past trying to stick specifically just to that schedule. We just all as a curriculum committee felt it was more beneficial for it obviously to come to us first, but have an almost like an open door type policy with these and be a little bit more flexible than very, very stringent to the calendar that we have in front of us.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jacobson?
On the ELA curriculum, can you just confirm that on the trade books that we have hard copies available of all of those books for all students, that they would be utilized, meaning they're not doing it audio, they're not doing it online, that we actually have the physical copies in hand for all of these books?
We have physical copies, but we don't have all these physical copies in every single book room. So there are some titles in one school, there are some titles in another school. So these are the ones that they have to choose from. But yes, there are hard copies.
Okay.
These will
so
not be read online.
I guess I'll be clear on my students will be holding these books in their hands. Thank you.
Hard
That's what I
copies.
wanted to get to. Thank you.
Yes, hard copies.
Thank you.
And I did also want to acknowledge the change you made of separating the books into the two lists. I think that it's really helpful, and I was delighted that you were willing to make that change.
Of course.
Mrs. Jacobson?
You thought it triggered my other question. Just some of the changes that we got in the backup for tonight, actually some of the actual changes from the last time, where books were removed from the book list and put back to where they were. Like, for example, the Harry Potter book that was in 6th grade, but nope, now it's going to stay in 8th grade, or things like that. What was that about?
In many cases, they were duplicated and they were in 2 grade levels. And so we had to reserve it for 1 grade level as opposed to another. And so the team decided where to put it and where it should live. So this way it was reserved for 1 grade level over another.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions? Okay, this is a voting item. So at this time, I'll go out to the public if there are any comments on this approval of the curriculum changes. Seeing none,
Can I
coming back to the board, sure.
Can I come back to my comment?
Yes, Ms. Jacobson.
It's a lot in one motion. I'd like to support some of this and not others. Are you, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, or the board objectionable to separating these out to separate votes?
I don't think we can separate them. I think what you can do is make a motion to amend the motion, stipulate the ones that you want in that motion, and then for anything else, you would have to ask for the board's support to add
Oh,
a
okay.
different motion.
All right, no, I'm not going to do that. Thank you.
Okay. And I apologize if I'd known ahead of time. We certainly could have brought it in separated. No other questions? All right, then we'll take this to a vote. All those in favor of the approval of the curriculum changes? Mrs. Bardenwerper, Mr. Lee, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Krasnov, those opposed? Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, vote carries 4-2. Thank you so much. Moving on to approval of policy 4151.9, 4251.9, absences and leaves military. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve policy 4151.9 4251.9, absences and leaves, military. If I can have a motion, please. Mrs. Jacobson, seconded by Mr. Lee. And just in speaking to this, this was on that June 23rd agenda. It comes back before you today. Sorry. And any questions or other discussion? Mrs. Flynn, you're not raising your hand, correct? Okay, Mrs. Jacobson.
Sure. I submitted a small amendment to this policy to the board earlier this week, and it's in your backup. It's in the posted backup, provided the proposal and rationale. This is something that I had raised concerns on at the June 9th meeting. As it was worded, and it was a little bit difficult to understand, a lot of legalese in here in the proposed change from our existing policy. And this amendment is just to make sure that the same policy that we have currently today that covers the salary to which they would have been entitled to during their employment, it is clear in this policy that we're maintaining that provision of our current policy in that. So that's pretty much a basic, my basic amendment. Everything else is the same.
Actually, Mrs.
Um,
Jacobson, I apologize. I let you get carried away. Can I first have the motion?
I'm so sorry.
Nope, that was my
I
fault.
made, what do you mean? We made the motion.
I'm
Oh, you
sorry?
mean you want me to make, oh, sorry,
Yes.
sorry, I'm sorry. Sure.
Sorry.
I know how Mrs. Flynn likes us to write out our motions. I make a motion to amend policy 4151.9/4251.9, absences, leaves, military, as submitted to the Board of Education on August 21st, 2026, and posted in the August 25th, 2026 Board of Education meeting enclosures from myself. Here's a copy. Read it. If anybody else wants.
Hold
a
on,
copy.
hold on. Seconded by Mrs. Flynn. Mrs. Jacobson, over to you now, please.
So I'm not going to repeat what I said. Pretty simple amendment. I think that we have a very clear policy right now in our existing policy that's been around at least since 2004 for over 22 years. I understand the need that the policy committee brought forward to us, but it is very opaque in terms of the language. You'd have to understand a lot of legalese. I'm just wanting to make sure that our current policy of providing the salary provision is maintained for our staff who leave their position to go serve our country, and that shouldn't be interrupted, and want to maintain that provision that's already in the existing policy. So that's the rationale. Hopefully that's supported by everyone, and pretty clear. It's just the exact same language that is in the current policy. So that's it. Happy to entertain any questions. And of course, I provided that I did speak to legal about this, and that was fine. And that the really important part was the very much that the policy committee brought forward is that last sentence was emphasized as me as important to keep, but I didn't change anything from policy other than to insert this sentence. So thank you.
Mrs. Flynn.
I just want to thank Ms. Jacobson for bringing this amendment forward. I had seen this language, I think the first time the policy came before us and flagged it. She did the work of talking to legal. I thank her very much for that, and I will be enthusiastically supporting this.
Other board members, Mr. Krasnoff.
Yeah, I have no problem supporting this. I'm wondering if it's redundant. Isn't that already covered in the Reemployment Rights Act of 1994 that they get their current salary wage?
So I did look this up, and I did clarify that the federal piece of this is the position. There are other state statutes involved, but it doesn't say specifically this. It's like other benefits and privileges, things like that. It's kind of some vague language. I want to be perfectly clear that we're keeping what we currently have. That's all. So that's the reason why I brought it forward. Whether it is or not is less important to me, that we're being perfectly clear.
One question I had, Mrs. Jacobson, is that did you intend for this wording, or maybe actually, let me start with to Mr. Testani. Would you read this wording to be that if a person were gone for a year, that when they came back, they would be entitled to their step raise, or would they come back at the salary that they had left?
My intent is that,
No,
yeah,
let me ask, I'm not sure how it reads to somebody who'd be applying it.
it's what the current policy is. So I guess isn't the clarification, what do we do now with this
I
policy?
think it's different because, teachers are, and administrators are the only ones that have salary steps annually, whereas everyone else has their categories.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it could read that you would get, you would get credit for the year and move a step,
Mhm.
but
It's the same sentence as now.
Yeah.
So it's not any change. I mean,
Yeah,
assuming this doesn't happen that often.
I don't, I'm not aware that it's happened.
Right. So, okay. So,
But if it does, I think, I'm more than happy to, again, to your point, someone who's going to serve our country, especially for an entire year, I think we should reward them in in any way we can. I mean,
Can Eric come up? Speak?
yeah, Eric can definitely chime in because I'm sure he's had this
Have a seat.
experience.
And if you could just introduce yourself, press the button so the green light goes on.
It's green. Through the chair, Eric Amato, Executive Director of HR. Under USERA, it's understood that the employees to be made whole, that's including cost of living increase. So if they are expected to progress through a step change, similar to a cost of living increase, you would apply it to the employee upon return.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know he would know.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so I'll go out to the public. This is, if there's any public comment on the amendment and the amendment only. No public comment. Back to the board. Those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. So now we'll come back to the main motion. Any questions on the main motion? Going out to the public. Anyone with any comments on this? Mrs. Jacobson.
it's not a comment on the, it is a comment related to the policy, and I would just ask that if anything does change at the federal or state level, that would cause the policy committee to have to update this in any way, because it is very legalese in language, that we have an opportunity to discuss more of a ceiling than the floor that's expected as it would come to act to us, just because this is something that could change, and I feel pretty strongly about this policy. So through the chair to Mr. Testani, if something changes either at the state or federal level on this, that we consider that as a board of what we can do. And anyway, if it's a subtraction. So thank you.
Okay, so again, the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve policy 4151.9, 4251.9 absences and leaves military as amended. All those in favor? It passes unanimously 6-0. Thank you very much. Now moving on to item 7A, new business, our district technology plan. After the suspense of the last 2 months, we'll finally have this. Is there a presentation with her? We're just working off of the enclosure. Okay, thank you.
Hello, Marco Tatti, Director of Technology. We're going to be discussing the technology plan. This plan was created through a committee. There was a grouping of academic leaders, as well as myself, some other technology staff, as well as Dr. Parrish, the Deputy Superintendent. And we had a great array of different levels and different individuals as a group. The goal of it was actually to think about the technology department, how we support the schools, the staff, and the students' devices, and really think about what the span of time means in terms of what we're buying, what we're purchasing, what we're planning for. And since I've started in this position, actually 2 years, if you can imagine, it's been 2 years already. A lot of things have changed in my department, the type of things that my staff are doing, the type of things that we're planning for. And so this represents a lot of that as well, in terms of the software that we're using internally for all of our different departments and how we think about efficiencies. Since all of those applications and systems funnel through my department, we spend a lot of time at the budget cycle thinking thoughtfully about how we spend our money on different software, different licenses, and this really encompasses the entire thought process that goes into why we're buying things, what we're buying, how we're buying it. Is there a better alternative? Essentially everything under the sun. My question is always, can we do it internally? Can we think more thoughtfully about that? Can we lower the license counts because we don't actually have the use case that we had in years past? So we spent a lot of time finding that information out, planning for it, and this document goes over really the macro level that is those micro decisions.
And I'm wondering, Mr. Todd, if you could, because some board members here are familiar with the district technology plans that we used to have. I know Dr. Parrish has actually referenced it a few times, but I know you could speak to it as well. Could you just describe that historical, what we used to have and what this is compared to that, and why we had that one in the past?
Yeah, so in the past, actually, the state of Connecticut required that a plan was submitted. It was in conjunction with a learning component. There was actually some pillars that needed to be met and discussed about how the district was going to plan out for different components. It actually, we were talking about it because it was a 5-year plan at the time, but we had revisited it internally every 3 years just to keep it fresh. And as of 2017, the 2018 one was ended essentially because that was the time frame when it was no longer going to be required. Internally, my predecessor did get a committee together to talk about it, to build a plan, and that plan was used internally for purchasing and whatnot, but it was never published or never discussed to the public. Is really a guide on how the department was ran and kind of like a boilerplate. For example, when I was handed the reins, here's some of the things that we do to plan. So we felt that not only should there be more people having input in this plan, because this is bigger than just my department, but also that it should be published and for the public to review and to discuss and have questions about it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the previous one also involved grant money in terms of its completion. Correct? That we had to have it fulfilled? Sorry.
Zakia Parrish, Deputy Superintendent. Based on the information that was provided to me when I first joined FPS by the previous Director of IT, she indicated that it was tied to a grant. Which grant, I am not sure of, and clearly it's not one that we still have a requirement to submit in order to collect any funds.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so you view this primarily as something dealing with infrastructure, even though that's really only referenced in domain 4.
Actually, yes. I think that it's one of those things where every component of this has some other nuances to it that come into planning for purchasing, planning, supporting. So domain 4 goes over particular purchasing, but every component of this entire plan has to do with how are we supporting the school, the staff, and the students. Everything from, you look at domain 2 when you talk about teaching and professional development. Well, how do we run those professional developments? Do we have virtual systems? Do we have devices or to give out to staff in certain circumstances, such as quickly being able to spin up for new teacher orientation so they have devices even though school hasn't started yet and we don't have the devices back? There's a lot of discussions that are happening internally by my staff that some of these components help me guide what they're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to jump in ahead of everybody else. So if I could have questions from the board on the district technology plan. Mrs. Flynn.
Thank you very much. May hop around a little bit. As I look at, so for domain 1, for example, I'm going to go down to goal 1.3, the equitable access. So for me, the entire page number 4. So for me, I think this seems like just kind of moving forward with what we're doing. It doesn't really have like an analyzing piece to it. And I think that's what I'm kind of missing. So like, I'm just going to read some of the questions I've noted down. For maintaining the one-to-one device program, what educational data supports that specifically for grades 3 through 5?
To be clear, that's not for me to answer. And again, this is about supporting the devices that are purchased and what it means. So if it's something that academics need for different lessons and classes, that's what we're going to ensure we have. And if I'm talking more about capital, which goes into domain 4, we've visited what a non-one-to-one, what a just device loose in the school would look like in terms of, and it's, the cost is absorbent.
Yeah. Fully understood. So even just as I'm moving through the whole document, and this is just to the chair and the superintendent, I think for myself personally, I've been anticipating this conversation for more than a year. And while the data in here and what's moving forward, I see and I understand, it's missing for me kind of the other side of the coin. So even if we move down to domain 2, goal 2.1, professional development, provide high quality. So the first strategy, gather and analyze teacher feedback to inform professional development priorities. In the top, it says, but you're collecting data. But for me, my question would be, can we collect data to ask the teachers how much technology has impacted instruction? Like, I feel like we're missing a step here, but I don't know how to get it with what's in front of us. So I don't know if I'm really asking a question or just yelling into the void, but that's kind of my top 2. And they're really not to you, Mr. Taddy. They're more oversight of our technology plan, and I just don't think that this necessarily hits the mark for me. I could keep going. I have a lot of questions, but I don't think who's before
Well,
us can really
I actually
answer
could
them.
answer that point, and maybe
Okay.
it'll help some insight.
That would be great.
So for example, that bullet point.
Yep.
Talks about, we have a lot of software, hardware across the district that are used by every staff under the sun.
Mhm.
We've historically paid for professional development. We've had people coming in, trainers, different systems, different classes. When I started, we were visiting what that looked like. I sat in on professional developments that were unrelated to myself to see what exactly was happening. What were they getting out of? Were teachers engaged? Were they actually learning something? Were they able to actually feel confident in those pieces of software or hardware? And we use that to decide how we're going to actually run professional developments. I went through and trained my own staff to actually run them, so we could do that when it was a timely fashion. The biggest feedback was teachers are not available in certain times. They're available at 1:10 to 1:40 because they have, recess or something. We could go in and train that teacher in grade 3 on how to use that new device. They feel confident in the classroom, and we can move to the next school and rinse and repeat. So this was related specifically to technology rollouts, how we train staff, and how we have discussions with staff about how to use hardware, software, and anything technology related.
That's actually very helpful. Can you talk too about how you would transition out technology that you found was not helpful to students anymore, even if it was? So say you come to find that a program that we're using is not effective and staff, like, how did those conversations come to be? Give an example if we've had
it's-
one.
We've had it a few times actually. When you're talking about presentation systems, like Smart Notebook has been a discussion for the last 2 years. It's just a piece of software that was tied to a piece of hardware that we had in the past, and had a lot of issues with our devices, a lot of issues with our laptops actually having problems with battery and things of that nature. And we slowly but surely have switched over to other vendors. So we are now using Promethean boards in the classroom. So the compatibilities aren't there. So we instead built trainings around other things that were more agnostic, Word, Google Docs, slides, things that were more universal, things we're already paying for. So it's things that a lot of teachers already were doing. You took the middle school level and they were already using those components, while say the elementary wasn't sure what they were supposed to use. A new teacher comes to the district and says, well, I've used to use this. Can I use that? And generally speaking, in those trainings and those discussions, we'll have those questions with them directly. We're going to meet with Stratfield's 8 staff. I think 3 of them are new and 4 are just wanted to rinse and repeat, and as well as Nikki Callahan wants to sit on it. So being new to the school. And I think that's a good example of a scenario where the questions will be asked directly. Hey, I'm in the classroom. What do we use as a district? What are things that are helpful? This is what I've done. This is what I think. And the collaboration is very helpful. So that then turns into what I decide and what our department, what we're going to purchase, what we're going to support. The next time I go to another school, here's some feedback about how we're actually transitioning people from this software to that. And until you get into those developments, it's hard to know what's going to be happening.
Got another one. Can I keep
You're on
going?
the floor.
So I'm gonna hop to page 5 where it talks about AI, which was a big topic last spring. I had seen some news articles maybe a week or two ago about some changes with Google when that I guess Google Classroom now automatically has AI turned on and certain things. I didn't know if you guys were even there yet, but it was kind of another example of like, do you feel like you have the ability in these documents to like get ahead of the horse?
A
I can
little,
send you the articles if you want to see 'em.
well, a little bit. I will say in that regard, what we've done to safeguard is essentially at the Google Workspace level, we have a hard set limits for anything Gemini or AI related. So that gives us that control so that if they decide to flip on a subcomponent, it doesn't just immediately turn on. I will say Google likes to play some games here and there. We're staying ahead of it. I have a really good team on my desk in my office working on that constantly, as well as our new filter system allows us to stay ahead of it as well. So if Google does change how, say, the AI search works, we can actually shut it down from other levels. So it gives us that finite control. And that's another example. We had a lot of discussions in the spring about the new filter, and that was about being able to have more control over how we actually support. So as opposed to just sending out an email to everybody saying, "Hey, by the way, don't use this because it's not great and I can't disable it," but instead I can actually disable it or decide what the next steps are.
So even if you can't totally disable it, you can tailor it to meet what our expectations are in Fairfield
It's a
as best we
mix.
can.
But in general, I will say, not that it's going to be for everything, but the filter actually gives us the command to disable it completely if needed, for every finite thing within a particular website as well. That's what gave us more control over YouTube, so we could use it for positive collaboration and content as opposed to just having people looking at ads and comments and things like that. So
Just 2 more.
May I
For
have one quick
go,
follow-up?
you can do it.
Just wanting to that idea of what the students are using on their screens. When they're in class, are most teachers using Go Guardian at this point or no?
that is grades 6 through 12. So yes, they are for sure. It's every subject. I can't say that every single class at every single day is using it, but when the Chromebooks are open, generally the teachers actually appreciate having just that visibility,
Mhm.
even if they're not applying the policy gates, as if you're aware with how the platform works. They're just having it open to have peace of mind that they know what's happening in the classroom.
Thank you.
So-
Sorry, Mrs. Flynn?
Were there any discussions of screen time specifically? I know those were discussions had when one-to-ones were adopted in 2019, and that was an explicit ask. Was for screen times and screen time restrictions at some grade levels? Was any of that discussed for this plan?
No, it was not. And going through the actual device usage, I would consider a different venture in terms of technology was something that we felt as a department to put together and as a district we thought was good for the public to see. But in terms of my department and what we purchased, that's separate from this discussion.
And just one last one. I think the last goal, or no, goal 3.2, this stakeholder engagement. Has any of that started or what are you envisioning for that with the public? I know we have a pretty robust, digital wellness community and people there, but how do you envision kind of getting the feedback of, our wide parent community? We've gotten some feedback that like, I like this, I like that. How are you kind of envisioning that happening?
Well, to be honest, this kind of covers a lot of components. One of them does talk about device use and internet safety, which I presented about in the spring. So we're talking about there's a lot of different conversations to be had. So in terms of what that means, I think it's just a constant communication about the changes that are happening with technology in in my department and in the district. And then in terms of stakeholders and communities discussions. There's more to come for that. I think that that's going to be something where we're getting a lot of feedback directly. If I'm honest, I think that we get a lot of information from communities and from these public meetings. But as it's needed for big discussions, that it'll continue to happen.
I just think any document that says equity to me, like there's a lot of people who make sure they get themselves in a room or make an email when we're kind of trying to get a broader sense of the community. We want to make sure we hear from everybody, especially the people that don't email us as regularly too. But thank you for the work. Much appreciated.
I just want to add, I think this document here, as Marco has mentioned, is a little bit different than some of the discussions we've had around technology usage, restrictions, limitations. I think that is separate from the technology plan. And I think we're going to have a lot of discussions over the next several months. Um, and I think gathering some information from families is going to be extremely important before we make any decisions moving forward on any more restrictions. I think Marco demonstrated in his presentation in the spring that I think we're doing an excellent job in trying to limit the amount of screen time during the school day. I think we've done an excellent job in taking cell phones out of the mix, and we're going to continue to do that. I'd be very curious if we were able to get an honest response from the entire Fairfield community on what is being done when they're not in school in terms of restrictions, in terms of device usage, in terms of internet accessibility during certain hours, what websites are being looked at, what restrictions people have in their homes on their internet service provider networks. I think a lot of that needs to come into our hands, that data, because it's starting to become a little bit overwhelming to us and school districts in general that we're trying to solve a problem that, first of all, we didn't create, and we have no control over 17, 18 hours of the day, which I think are very, very important hours. Because, again, in 4 years, I've never walked into an elementary school classroom and seen kids on Chromebooks. Never. And again, I've said it before, I come unannounced. So it's not like, oh, the superintendent's coming. Make sure all our Chromebooks are put away. So I think it's important that if we're going to start gathering data, Mrs. Flynn, I think you're 100% right. We need to get everyone involved. I think we've heard from a small percentage of our public. I don't think we've heard from the vast majority of our public. And from even the ones we've heard from, I'd be interested to see what measures are being taken over the last, 9 weeks that have limited screen time. Because I think that's important data as well, because it doesn't then just click off on September 1st when they walk into a school building. I mean, I see it with adults all the time that they're spending hours and hours and hours scrolling, and when they have free time, and then it becomes a habit. So I think there's a lot of data that needs to be collected, and I think that we're doing our part, and we will continue to look at other ways that we can continue to be better. But this goes well beyond school.
Thank you. Mrs. Flynn?
Thank you. I totally agree. And parenting right now is not easy nor fun. Like I said, a lot of these things kind of came at communities at a flood during COVID, including our school communities. But one thing I want to make sure we are doing is that now what we didn't have 5 years ago was data. And now we are getting scientific data about the efficacy of some of these practices. For example, the efficacy of taking notes by typing versus writing. So things like that are what I'm talking about, are things that practices and norms that we adapted to during a crisis without looking at their effectiveness. So as we are collecting that data, especially for our littlest learners, now if someone wants to doom scroll for 12 hours a day and they're in their 30s, they're not my charge, but they're just not. But when we're talking about educational practices, that's what I'm worried about. So I'm with you. The Wait Till Eighth campaign, we were the chargers of that. And I really believe now that I think there's a lot of 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade parents who the first device their kids are getting is from us. And I think that's what the concern is starting to be.
Can I add, sometime, I believe it was actually early fall, so almost an exact a full year ago, I also sat before this board and I published a internet use at home guide. It goes over every way of controlling your network, your routers for every provider, and any parent who's emailed, you can attest to a few parents, I can pull them up. I've actually called and walked through how to set up their router at their house to have control over their network, how to block, how to limit time. So, anything we can do for my department to actually help those discussions and but I've been trying our best to do. So
Out of curiosity, how do you publicize that?
it's actually just on our public website, and I think we could maybe put it in the next Friday packet so it's easier to see.
Well, just a
Um,
suggestion of something like a social media blast or something, because I've never.
I think it
didn't-
was sent out, but it's been a
Okay.
year.
Yeah,
You know,
so I
it's a
think the
good point,
start of
though.
a school year would be a
Nothing- yeah.
great time to do
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, definitely.
because I definitely think parents are looking
We go
for
over
help.
every device type, every phone, every tablet, every internet source. Yeah.
Okay, Mrs. Jacobson.
I'm going to have a couple specific questions and then some broader ones. On page 3, the expand digital citizenship instruction to grades 10 through 12 through integration with existing courses. Just 2 questions. Can you provide a little more color on that?
Mrs. Jacobson, I apologize, I missed the page number.
3. Expand digital citizenship instruction to grades 10 through 12 through integration with existing courses. So just looking for a little bit more color on exactly what that means, why those grades, et cetera.
I actually am not sure specifically. I believe we were talking with the LMS group. They had talked about that because digital citizenship has always been a big discussion in K through 5. I'm not sure if Claire actually has some more insight to this because the LMS group was actually talking more about the ISD standards during those discussions. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. I,
Yeah.
All right, hit the button.
Claire Staffstrom, Holland Hill Elementary School Library Media Specialist. So I feel like I can't speak to exactly what's happening in middle and high school about the about digital citizenship. It absolutely is part of the curriculum, but I don't know the specifics, and it would, I can't speak to that, but it is woven absolutely throughout elementary school, as you know, because we did that presentation last year. The standards go all the way through 12th grade, but I'm not 100% sure. And
Yeah, I know for a fact that the middle school felt they had a very strong place. It's possible that the high school felt to add that line to actually further it, but
I feel like, is this in response to some of the incidents, like maybe like of posting things and I can't remember exactly, but I don't know if this is where this kind of came from, and that some of these upper grades a little bit more beefy and like what the consequences of your social media presence is. And I don't know if that's related to this,
because I
but
do know
I
it is
feel like
woven through, the curriculum.
it's like the
and in
footprint
implementation.
and, you know,
Mhm.
the illegal implications for things and some of the incidents that we had
I
that
think-
had to do with social media
Yeah.
last year, maybe?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
A lot of that is in there already, so, but I'm not 100% sure.
I was just
about the
curious
specific
why
language.
10 to 12 and just, okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you. On page 5, provide guidance on academic integrity in the context of generative AI. Do you have a timeline on that?
so this is a good example of something that we kind of wove into the actual AR now. It was a guideline, and so the idea was more based on going through that guideline thoughtfully and continuing to do it every year or even every 6 months, depending on how things are changing in AI, to talk to staff about that. So in terms of publicizing that AR, we could talk about publishing it as we go through and make changes. That's probably a good idea. But in terms of guidance, that's more of a discussion that happens at every discussion throughout the K through 12 level.
Like, meaning,
for
is there
staff.
a document on your website that says guidance on AI besides the policy, so to speak?
No, there's not.
Yeah, okay. And that might just be something that's separate from this tech plan and moves to administration and policy, because we did hear from several parents last year about like accusations and then there wasn't a process and like all of this stuff. So it might not be per this tech plan, but it's in here, so I'm taking the opportunity to ask about it.
Just to respond quickly to that, I think the process, and in that specific instance, because I also got involved, there was the normal, typical process followed in any case where a student is suspected of possibly plagiarizing
Of course.
or cheating or anything else. I think specific to artificial intelligence, it may be something that we should probably explicitly put and get out there as we start the school year so that,
For like example, if I
Yep.
put this into something, which I don't even know how to do, but if I did, which if I did, would it say that part of this was, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think we have to be really
Yeah.
careful. Like, and I don't know what the answer is, but maybe somebody who does could try it and see what it says.
Yeah.
Or one of your papers from back when, you know,
to give you
because
an
like,
idea.
you got to test the system. Like, if I know, like, if you wrote a paper in like 1995,
Right.
and you put it in AI right now, would it say, "Oh yeah, this is likely to have been written with AI"? Do you know what I'm saying? I don't know, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
Yeah, no, no.
Don't get me
No, no.
wrong. I'm just saying we're in a very weird space.
So just to that point, we had a meeting 2 weeks ago. All the Derby superintendents were called together just to talk about some things that, I just thought it was a nice idea. One of my colleagues scheduled it. And we were provided as a group the night before with a document from CAPS.
Yeah.
And it was a 50-page document that had been created. So someone figured no one was going to have time to read it because we got it at 10 o'clock at night. Probably many people didn't see it. The meeting was at 11 in the morning. So to your point, somebody ran it through an AI program to summarize it in 3 pages or less, and then read the actual 50 pages and compared it to the summary page, 3-page, to make sure it was accurate. And apparently it gave a very detailed synopsis in 3 pages that was reflective of the 50-page document. So to your point, yeah, I mean, it's pretty scary.
All right, so just it's
Well-
in here. That's what I'm asking about. So I don't know if I'm kicking that too,
Well,
but
can I also be clear too? We also looked at it as in technology, where the tech department would be weighing in and actually being a part of those discussions. To be clear, so monitor and emerging AI development and support policies accordingly. As in, like, the technology department and the people that are part of that would be talking about that. So with policies, with even academics, and having discussions with those leaders. I think that's kind of the point, is in terms of what does the technology department do in this district, and how do we support?
yeah, I mean, you hear a lot around the country now that people are going for, especially in certain subject areas, they're just going back to the blue book, right? Like things like that. So I'm just throwing that out there. I'll move on because we could probably go down that for a really long time. On page 7, under strategies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just had a hard time understanding this sentence. So operational efficiency, the foster systemic adoption by demonstrating efficiency gains that generate organic demand for collaboration with the technology department. Just can that be?
Yeah, that was a fun. I think I wrote.
sentence?
I think I wrote
Don't know
about
what it means.
I wrote like a 3-paragraph note, and the committee, essentially what this is that my department, as I mentioned earlier, is constantly building and looking at workflows that exist in all the departments in the schools and thinking of better ways to do it. One of the problems is having a scenario where other departments think or want to have discussions with my department about changing the way they do things. So fostering those relationships and coming up with being a part of those conversations has been a key role in efficiencies. There's numerous efficiencies throughout the central office as well as the schools in terms of those things. So it comes to, say, a secretary at a high school that says, you know what, why don't I ask the tech department? Maybe they have a better idea for how I can print these letterheads.
It was a very interesting sentence.
Yeah,
I just
I
wanted to understand
agreed.
what it meant.
Yeah.
What it meant. And then just going back to the memo a little bit, and you said that the plan is organized around 4 domains, each containing specific goals, strategies, and measurable outcomes. I see the goals in here and the strategies, but I didn't see anything that I would quantify as measurable outcomes. What were the
Which page are you on?
the
I'm sorry.
memo?
The cover memo.
The cover
sorry.
memo.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how that changed, but essentially, the plan came into more of a structured approach based on previous plans. So I think it's in terms of what the goals are.
Because I love that it would contemplate measurable outcomes.
Right.
Because this does contemplate investment by the board and in the town. And I think that where we're losing places is that you're looking at this as like a software
Yeah.
infrastructure and not an achievement plan. And hence achievement's not in this document, right? Anywhere in terms of this technology plan and how it is correlated with KPIs or SLOs. And for that, in what are I'm using a lot of, acronyms right now. What is the ROI on those and continued investments? So while the public or maybe us may say, how does this tech plan and its investment relate to student outcomes or efficiencies or whatever it might be with some of those KPIs or SLOs if they were embedded in here? So you have your purpose for it, but I think it might be just as the superintendent interpreted as something different than what it's front facing to mean. And that the community or even some of us here considering we know that there's professional development, it's a changing landscape, there's teacher responsibility, there's all these responsibilities. And maybe viewing this more as, yes, a software, what we're investing in, hardware, things, but also how does this actually all benefit kids in terms of the outcomes and the investment dollars that our taxpayers are spending on every year and the millions of dollars. So I don't know if there's a way to marry this somehow. I don't think we're voting on this, but since it had the measurable outcomes, I don't know if something else with the committee can be talked about. How do we marry your infrastructure software plan with the investment and our expectations around and how we would measure what is actually proving or providing evidence in terms of the academic achievement and the time that kids are spending on these things versus doing something else? But big philosophy, a thing out there.
And I think it's something that we do need to consider because you just said it, we invest a lot of money into hardware and software. And what would be the difference in terms of student outcomes had we invested zero, right? So I think it's a discussion that we need to have and then engage a lot of different folks around the table and go through what we spend money on and what the rationale behind what we're getting for it. For example, it came out, Google Classroom, for example. Not offhand, I'm not asking Marco to even say what we spend for the Google Suite, but what is the purpose of the Google Suite and what do students get out of it other than X, Y, or Z? I think you bring up a great point.
Fiscal fiduciary accountability piece, the ROI piece. And then there's the academic achievement piece. And I'm not saying there is or there isn't. I do think recent research is saying that it's not contributing ed tech that much. And even the state guidance has indicated that. And I'm not saying some of it is doing so. I know it's probably really hard to prove, that correlation or that causality and isolate that without a control group and this class got it and this class didn't get it and who did better. But there's something about this that I feel like just the community, and I hear your perspective, your department, what your plan is versus how the community, I think, is perceiving what it could be potentially or should be even. So I'll stop talking, but thank you so much for that. And I kick it over to the committee if there's something to ponder in that realm.
And before I go to Mr. Krasnov, to building on Mrs. Jacobson's point, that's why I started by wanting to give that historical background to this plan, because I will admit, until I ran into you and had you explained a few things to me, I was thinking this was the technology plan of a whole different nature. And once you explained, no, this is the financial piece, this is the hardware, software, completely changed all of the questions I had on most of the pages, because that's not how I had been viewing this. So the term is fine. It just wasn't what I thought we were going to be discussing here tonight. So just kind of reaffirming Mrs. Jacobson's point that now that I know its purpose, I'm taking a very different stance towards it. But again, these are just conversations that'll need to continue. I'm not even asking you to weigh in on that. I'm just thanking you for the discussion earlier. Over to Mr. Krasnov.
And I'm gonna piggyback on that as well. I read it multiple times. The first time I kind of got what you guys got, that it was a little bit different of a plan. But when I read it the second time, I kind of understood what you guys were saying in terms of like gather and analyze, that you're going to be doing analyzation and analysis and work on each of these projects. This is like macro, and you're going to get micro, and each individual thing will be separate, I'm assuming, right? This is just like an overarching plan for your department, purchasing, technology, et cetera.
Well, that's why
correct?
device usage is a great example of this, where it's one bullet here. But we've spent a lot of time analyzing, quantifying, presenting, and plan to continue presenting to the public what that device usage looks like. I think that's a point of this, is that this is to make sure that my department can handle that type of task, so that we can then support the schools and the academics on how they want to drive the ship, as well as making sure the public is aware of that information. And I think that data and that information is just one component of something that we're looking to quantify in different ways to actually be able to figure out those ROIs. Because otherwise, even the example of Google Workspace, as the superintendent mentioned, we also have Office as well. So we have two different programs, and which one is more efficient, which one's more worthwhile, which one actually provides ROI, is a much different conversation when you're talking about, well, Office is by staff, not by students. So then what is the purpose of it? And I think we've done a lot of work in my department to split up and to analyze software directly by each department, and have those discussions. You spent this many hours and this many users actually used this software last year. What is your plan for this year? And let's support that. So that information we've been gathering and putting together, and we'll continue to collaborate with our peers and staff.
So to that point, the one suggestion I had was to add analyze to each domain somewhere. Some of them have it, some of them don't, and I think you're going to end up analyzing it anyway. It might as well be in this document, so it shows that you are going to have measurables. So that was the only thing I was going to. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I'm going to send some feedback to you as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 7B, first reading of the draft capital waterfall through 2041, dated August 20th, 2026. If you can turn to enclosure 5. And with Mr. Papa George not here, I turn that over to you, Mr. Testani.
Yep, thank you. I think Meg handed in front of you, you have just an overview of some of the changes that have been made to the document from the last time that this was put in front of you. Again, Mr. Papa George regrets his inability to be here tonight, but he did understand that time is of the essence, that we have a timeline to, with the capital, always find it interesting, the Capital Summit or what have you that's coming up. I know that this was gone through in very much detail at the Facilities Committee. So we have two members of the Facilities Committee as well to help clarify any questions. I think the biggest change to the document is number 9. And this was a recommendation brought forth by the HVAC Building Committee to move the Fairfield Ward High School HVAC project up, simply because there's an 18-month lull. And while they have their committee and their charge, they feel very strongly that this project can fill into that gap and be completed in its entirety. And it'll have no impact on the Fairfield Ludlow High School project. However, they did feel that, and they looked very closely at if they moved Ludlow up, what that impact would be. It is a much more complicated project, according to the building committee and the owner's rep, that trying to do that in that window would definitely have an impact on the Fairfield Ward project being pushed out. Mr. Lee, anything that I said there that you may want to fill in some blanks I may be missing.
I think you hit it right on the spot. If you keep the ward project back where it is, you have a building committee and their vendors that have already been approved just sitting around for 18 months. We can approve it. If everything's approved by October, they can start moving and ordering stuff for the Ward High School project. The project can begin sometime in July. And because it's going to be working with students in the school throughout the year, you're looking at about sections being done. So it'll be completed within 2 years, give or take, if we can start now. It's just to keep the momentum going on what we have. And as Mr. Testani said, when they evaluated the Ludlow project, the Fairfield Ward project is a lot simpler to get done. A lot less complex and different things. And if we push it forward, I don't want to speak out of turn, but there potentially could be a savings somewhere because we are doing it earlier than projected and we have the buying power and things like that for Ward.
Thank you. I also want to bring your attention to number 8, the Fairfield Ludlow High School field replacement. If you've been by the field, and I think, we're going to have some other discussions. The visiting side bleachers have been condemned after the last inspection. They are unsafe to be used. So that's been added to this project. And that's going to be an ask. We're going to have some more internal discussions. I think we need to take the bleachers down in its entirety. There's this thought that leaving them up condemned will better provide us with a rationale and evidence that we need this, additional funding. But I just am worried about possible liability having those bleachers, even though they've been blocked off and taped off and everything, still there. So that's an ongoing discussion that we're going to have to look to see if we can find a few dollars in the maintenance budget to have those removed. I'd like to do that prior to the first game. It just doesn't, it's not a good look for the school and for the district as well. But as you can go through each of the changes, there hasn't been any major changes except the addition of the Tomlinson Middle School auditorium and common area restoration. We've updated some numbers. We're asking for the seed money for Jennings Elementary School. Some things have been taken off the list. Some things have gotten better numbers. But overall, there's been no other major changes than the ones that I highlight.
Okay, questions from the board? Mr. Krasnoff.
I just wanted to add something to the Ludlow High School, just to make it clear. Originally, it was gonna be redone, and now it's gonna be replaced. So just so people understand the cost, it's a whole different project now. Originally, it was gonna be redone, and now it needs to be replaced. It's gonna have a completely different material being used, so the cost is quite a bit higher now.
Yeah, so the turf replacement is going to be reflective of removing the crumb rubber, using the product that we're using at the new turf fields at Fairfield Ward. But in addition, the track needs to be replaced. While doing the track, Mr. Parness says, at the request of the track coaches, there's going to be some reconfiguration of some of the pits and things like that. So the cost now has increased overall to the turf replacement at Ludlow. But it is because it's a little bit more of an extensive job while we're replacing the turf itself. We've had some issues over the last couple of years trying to repair the track so it's operable for track and field season, but those charges are getting to become more and more, so we need a full replacement.
Okay, Mrs. Jacobson.
I have a lot, but I'm just going to go with the flow and how these are coming up. To do the field, let me just ask my question first. I raised the issue of the bathrooms for a really long time. That, to me, really shouldn't even exist anymore. when you say, when the description is upgrades to the existing restroom facilities, can you provide more color, please, on what upgrades mean?
Yeah, so right now, from what I've never used the bathroom at the outdoor, but it is gonna be an expansion. Um, in that, that, that structure to add more bathrooms, to the structure. So it's not just, I believe we're one unit right now.
It's
am I-
2 stalls.
It's two, I'm sorry.
but, Yeah.
There's gonna be an expansion, based on the storage that's gonna be removed and relocated so that they can add more units of, bathrooms.
Just for follow-up, it would be helpful, I think, if we could just get a breakdown and just, it sounds like a lot of work for this amount of money.
Sure.
So what is this estimate? Did we get a professional estimate for the bleachers, the bathrooms, the turf, the track, all the things that you want to do? Like, do we have an estimate from all the different companies that is making up this $2.9 million?
I believe so. Let me just confirm with
Okay.
Mr. Papa George.
Just looking for the sources of the estimates on
Yep.
that, and if there's like a breakdown.
Yep.
Of it, and just a little more color on that. Sorry, Mrs. Max Kelly, I'm not gonna till we're.
If I
ready.
can add to that.
Mr. Lee?
Sorry. The bleachers is actually a recent situation, so that's why it escalated a little more. It's something that needs to be done. So it happened within, I believe, the last month or so.
Last month when it went for inspection, it didn't pass. So they've been condemned. And I think, the feedback we've gotten prior to that was that there was a hope that we could redo the bleachers when the time came, by the administration, and make those bleachers larger, more expansive. As you all are aware, they're not very large. When we're hosting large games, we often have the visiting fans over with our fans. Sometimes when the student sections mix, it's not always a great situation. So the hope was when we did do the bleachers and now we're going to do them, we would make them more suitable, for that side of the field.
Okay, just one more on this, besides the follow-ups that I've asked for. Just through the chair to Mr. Lee, did you guys talk about the concession stand project as a part of this?
Not part of this one because of the bleachers and the turf field was important. We did talk about it in the past, but I don't believe it's part of this because
No, I
There-
know it's not part of it. That's why I was asking if you had discussed it and what that discussion was.
we discussed it. I'll get back to you. I don't remember where we left it.
Okay. That's just been sitting out there for a really long time. Sorry.
Mr. Krasnoff?
Yeah, I brought it up. I asked about it and they're gonna try to possibly make it part of the project, but at this point, he had just gotten quotes for doing the field, the turf, and expanding the bathroom with a new storage area, then plus the bleacher project.
Well, while we're out there is just what I'm thinking.
No,
Like, while
I-
we're out
I-
there, I mean,
Mr. Papa George isn't here to speak to it, but it was brought up and discussed.
the follow-ups for this item, Mrs. Max Klein, and I can submit this. Do you prefer if we all submit something, like some sort of a
I'm jotting
doc?
some notes down, but by all means submit
Okay,
as well.
so it's gonna be like a breakdown of the number,
Yep.
for each of the things of the source of the estimate. And then I'm also gonna follow up on the concession stand on this item. I don't know how you want it. Do you want to go like building by building, or just everybody's just gonna jump around, or like, do you want to spur any question? Like, or should we just jump around?
Sorry,
Oh, no.
it's not avoiding answering your question.
I know you're not. Pause. Pause.
Take a break. All right, that's at least gonna hold it. Yeah, don't leave. That's fair point. I wasn't sure of how many questions there would be, and that was gonna govern this, but if there are that many, thank you so much. Why don't we, then let's just go project by project. I would just ask that people be ready with their questions so we don't have to backtrack. So, just starting off there with so again, I'm on enclosure 5 right now, the district-wide projects. Any questions? Thank you, Mrs. Brown. The book is gonna be the next topic, is gonna be the next agenda item. So,
Just to be clear, the concessions is included in the concessions is included. I don't know what that design looks like.
it was gonna be a locker room, so that the teams could meet
Yeah, I
up
don't
there.
think that, I think we've abandoned the locker room. idea, but the concessions is included. Yep.
That's okay. All right, so district-wide, no questions. All right, next, Burr Elementary, any questions? Seeing none. Dwight Elementary, any questions? Mrs. Jacobson?
I just had a question. I appreciate the fact that this has changed from last year where we had the different reimbursement amounts because now that's no longer applicable. This will be one of my follow-up questions, just as a heads up, unless somebody can speak to it. The $31 million now that is estimated here, with a new net to the town from 45 down from the 60. Indicating a roughly $16 million increase in the reimbursement there from what we previously had. My question is, and again, Mr. Testani, I'm happy just to submit this, is how the math and the calculation was done on that. Just because when I do it myself, I'm coming up with about $4 million more. And I don't know if that's because somebody wanted to, was doing some sort of abstraction, but when you do the formula, it's more like 35 million.
For
And
which column, Mrs.
Dwight,
No,
the reimbursement amount, sorry.
Okay.
Dwight, special legislation, 31, et cetera. And there may be a reason for that, but when I'm doing the math, it's about a little bit $4 million more, and I just was looking to understand that a little bit.
I asked that exact question. He wanted to put what we're guaranteed to get. The other stuff kind of falls into a bit of a gray area, and we're definitely gonna get more money. But he put like the bottom line of what we're guaranteed to get in
Can you
here.
clarify what guaranteed to get and other stuff means?
What we know submitting, according to the state, what will be approved for us to get at this point. There are other things that fall into an area that we would have to make sure the state is gonna reimburse us. So we probably will get reimbursed for more, but he wanted to put a lower number.
Okay.
So he'd rather get more money back than less money back.
Okay, just so a follow-up question is going to be to show the math on that, so I have an understanding of what it is. Sorry, Mrs. Max, I'm done on that.
okay. Anybody else for Dwight? Holland Hill? Questions?
Nothing there.
Okay, Jennings? Mrs. Flynn?
Is there just any insight into that 4.9? This is gonna come when we talk about the book too, but like how we got to that number, where that number came from,
In terms of the seed money?
because it's different from any other process that I can follow in the past. So I'm just curious some insight into that.
It is a
Mr. Lee?
Sorry, I'm sorry. It is a percentage of what he figured that he takes from the entire total. He subtracted that from, if you look at the Jennings project as a whole, he just took that number away from it based on his formula he got that he used for other without speaking out of the term, if I'm incorrect, he'll correct it, but it's his percentage based on what the total project was. Correct. So it's actually a $48 million project, but he took the 4 million away from that.
You mean the
Total.
49 million?
49, sorry.
I think I'm just a little confused because that 49 million was representative of like construction costs and all that stuff. So when I look at what's being described, it's not. It's stuff we've already kind of done with it's schematics. I'm just curious kind of like the button points of where the process is real different. So I'm having a hard time stringing the things together.
This process, he's asking for the seed money so we can start the process like we have in the past to actually nail down somewhat of an exact number. So we also can start that process about reimbursement. There is no building committee yet for this. There is nothing right now. It's just to start the process down the line.
Mrs. Flynn, may Mr. Krasnoff jump in also?
Sure.
Mr. Krasnoff?
I asked that exact question, how he came up with the number. He said he based it off the number of the cost to do all the things for Dwight that we would need to do in terms of what we would use the seed money for, and then added 3%. That was the answer. So if you want to follow up with him about that
Yeah.
answer, you definitely can, but
Yeah.
that was the answer he gave.
I think we're going to have to follow up with it because just from looking back at the processes all the way back for Riverfield, Mill Hill, it just doesn't follow the same. And I'm just a little bit confused because Dwight was absolutely a different process. The first new build that we've done in a very long time. This is kind of going back to the like renovation I did. Like I said, I have some questions about the book when we get there, but I'm kind of just curious. That 5 million to me is not representative of construction costs. So why are we pulling it out of construction costs? Does that make sense?
I think it was pulled out of the project total. Not out of construction, just the project total. But regardless, we'll
You-
get
you know,
more
yeah,
information. That's
I need
fine.
more information. Oh, I can follow up.
Okay. Anybody else for Jennings?
I'm just gonna go
Oh,
back
sorry.
to Dwight for a second. The 31,303,818 was provided by the architects and the owner's rep. Mr. Papa George said if you have different figures, if you can share those,
Okay.
he'd be happy to show them and have a look.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Ms.
Yep. Mrs. Jacobson, you had your hand up
Jess, can I go?
for Jennings. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm gonna piggyback on here.
And to answer the question on Jennings, those are the actuals based on the design numbers from Dwight.
So I'm first thrilled to see that we're going for a project team initial funding on this waterfall for Jennings. I similarly have great confusion on this number, going back to just for people to know, Mrs. Kelly, who might not remember the era of initial seed funding is on an approved project to get design documents and specifications to bring forward the full funding authorization to the town based on better numbers. This is due to in the past when we were going off conceptual designs and the numbers were coming back way wrong. So they instituted this thing called project team initial funding that is based on an approved project that would get it to design document phase. So we'd have better estimates. So just a little history on why we have this step in here that people might not be familiar where it came from. However, in going back to previous projects, none of them were 10% of the cost. This is a very, very high number. And also considering that the town spent 446 contracted hours on Jennings, and some of the language in the description are things that were already done. So I was a little confused on why that would be a part of this when a lot of this was already done. So I have a concern on the amount of this, but also just through the chair to Mr. Lee. Again, in the description, it says going to a building committee, which yes, we typically do that once if the town boards approve this seed funding. But usually that is accompanied by a lot more information. So there really isn't a building committee ever that I'm aware of that didn't have an ed spec because the building committee is guided by our ed spec. Also, just through to Mr. Lee, did you guys go over a breakdown of the $4.9 million in terms of the line items that was going to be expended on? That just wasn't in our backup, and typically the seed funding in the past, seed funding, that's slang, the project team initial funding request is accompanied by a breakdown of what the town is going to be getting for those dollars and what the costs are for. So did the committee go through a breakdown of the 4.9?
We did not at the time because we want to make sure we can get to that next level. We'll be able to provide it. I mean, you asking for seed money that we have basically going out to research and everything, like you said about the ed specs and stuff. And to piggyback that, we do have partial ed specs too, based on what we worked on previously on the building committee, on the facilities committee. So there is no breakdown right now. He just figured maybe be a good step to start some kind of process to take it to that next level instead of waiting for that 29, 30 year. Just to get maybe some better numbers, maybe to come up with a plan. We'll have a better idea what we can actually do there because of some potential restrictions and stuff. So I think that's what it was mostly for.
Yeah, I think the bigger problem is that we run into issues going out to bid for an architect to give us the numbers and then not letting them fully work through the project.
No, I'm not
Yeah, no, I
denying
think-
the
yeah.
idea of the initial seed
Yeah.
funding. I'm debating the dollar amount that is inconsistent with previous initial funding requests. And also in light of the fact that a lot of work was already done by Svagals, like topography, zone compliance, wetlands, code compliance, existing conditions, the description that was written in this book.
Okay, remember, we're not talking
I
about the
know,
book yet.
I'm just saying, but it's representative of the book. So
Is it fair to say that Mr. Papa George needs to come to the next meeting?
Yeah.
Or actually, perhaps because we shouldn't be just hearing it for the first time at the next meeting, I have written down that there is interest in a great deal more explanation of this dollar amount,
Yes.
given what we have with, almost redundant to the previous study. So, point noted, I do think the board needs that information.
the other thing on Jennings is the gap in between. So for Holland Hill, Mill Hill, even when we asked for seed funding for Dwight, Riverfield, et cetera, Stratfield, et cetera, there was no gap between the initial funding request and the actual construction. It went initial funding request, which would mean pulling forward Jennings into the 28-29 column instead. So again, that could be a follow-up question, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, on why this gap was left here when no other building experienced that gap, thereby delaying the much-needed work at Jennings that needs to be done. Is there comment? Can I just keep going?
I think you can keep going, except Mr. Lee, do you want to give some committee feedback on that?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons there's a gap is because if you look at what's going on, if it's approved, you have the Dwight building construction still going on along with Ward. So you're gonna be, if everything goes as planned, if you narrow down that gap, you'll have three major school projects going on.
So I might have to, yeah, so that was going to be another thing. We don't have the cash flow in front of us. I guess not making any determinations right now, but it would concern me if we were waiting on an elementary school that doesn't have any ventilation in order to do a high school that has 60% ventilation, because I know they all need to get done, don't get me wrong, but if that is actually the reason that it's a cash flow basis, that's concerning to me. And then I'm going to move on. I only have one more question, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, on this school. The reimbursement amount here was the same as last year. It hasn't been updated, and just has the board and town boards and everyone was informed last year that projects after July 1, 2026 were going to be subject to a cost per square foot cap. That is now in place. So therefore, the number needs to be recalculated for Jennings on the reimbursement to be lower than what it is here and a higher net to town. It's a threefold formula on the renovation space, the K-5 addition, well, extension technically called, and then the ECC space if this is what we're doing. But there should be an adjustment here based on the fact that now our projects are subject to this cap that wasn't in place when these numbers were made up from last year.
Okay. Any other questions on Jennings? Mr. Krasnoff?
I just want to make one more statement on Jennings. We had a lot of discussions about what could be done there, what might be able to be done there in terms of the topography. There was some talk about possible additional space that we found that might be between Jennings and Woods. So I think it's a little more complicated than Svagals and what we already initially know. Maybe
Yeah.
Superintendent
We
Testani
talked a
can
little bit about
elaborate.
that what the Svigals work just kind of skimmed the surface. And what they're finding now, and of course, I mean, with the Dwight project is they're pointing to some of the work done by Svigals as to why they're significantly over budget, and need to start making cuts to their original thought process, the building committee.
Okay. But we definitely need that breakdown, so we will get that more information. Okay, Ms. McKinley? Any questions? Okay, Mill Hill? Well, that's straight zeros. Okay. Page 2, North Stratfield, Mrs. Flynn.
This is really far out, and I can't even actually remember what year North Stratfield is on. I think they're like the last major or building period to be on deck for like a renovation. I think the AC kind of knocked out most of the stuff that was on that deficiency list, if I'm not correct. But there's still like the room sizes and stuff. Is there been any talk of North Stratfield? I'm curious just when that would start.
There hasn't, like you said, the AC project knocked out a lot of things on that list, including the school fire alarm replacement, which has been removed from that capital plan, like stated.
Yeah, I was just curious. Like I said, it's kind of, I know that there's been a lot of discussions about like the track versus the runway. North Stratfield is kind of the end of our track and where we kind of start over again. So it's kind of a marker for me.
Anyone else for North Stratfield? Mr. Krasnoff?
There actually is a placeholder in year 2036, 37. See the $2? That's
Oh, that's
actually a
right.
placeholder for North Stratfield. Yep.
So did I. Okay. Everyone, anybody else? Okay, Osborne Hill? Mrs. Jacobson?
I just have the same comment on Osborne Hill about the reimbursement amount on here is still the same as it was from last year. Not cognizant of the new cost per square foot cap that was passed. My comment would be, does the building committee, the facilities committee need to recalculate that number and make that adjustment on the waterfall?
Okay. Anyone else? Osborne Hill? Okay, Riverfield? Roger Sherman? Mrs. Barnwarper?
Thank you. I know last year I met with the facilities committee and we did a walkthrough of Roger Sherman regarding some issues with library ventilation as well as asbestos tiles that they're currently kind of covering with glue and encapsulating. I was wondering if any updates were from facilities based on that walkthrough. Yeah, I just don't see anything coming up on the waterfall.
Mr. Lee?
We discussed it after the walkthrough. I believe he was in communications with the principal. But we can ask him for a follow-up on that too.
Thank you.
Can I follow up on that?
Mrs. Jacobson?
So Sherman is in our long-range facilities plan for a phase 4, but it's just not captured in the amount of time on this waterfall. I think that's pertinent to Sherman and on North Stratfield that at some point, so there's a double-edged sword here. As Mr. Sistani will probably be able to say, you can go out and try to get an estimate and then try to escalate it out 10 to 15 years. It's probably not going to be too accurate. On the other hand, it does give the town, the community, some idea that we're trying to get some sort of an idea because we know that they are out there at some point. So it might be helpful to, I don't know how to do it. I caution that because I know if you put whatever it is on here, 30 million, 40 million, 50 million, and then you get there and it's 80 million, you get whatever. So that never happens. So it's kind of an explanation for the community why it might not be on here since it's so far out. Although we know we've identified that through other documentation as needs, but it's kind of a double-edged sword. Sorry, Miss, I have another question on Sherman, but I don't think I.
Okay, Ms. Barnwarper, all set?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Krasnoff?
In facilities, we discussed, in Sherman's case, a lot of the projects are smaller projects, so they're gonna be done along the way, and we may knock some stuff out before we even get to this date, so that's why the number's what it is for now. That, and Mr. Papa George felt a lot of the stuff was smaller compared to some of the massive building projects we're doing in other buildings.
If I can just ask as a quick follow-up, was any discussion of a computer lab?
I'm not sure. Mr. Lee, do you remember?
I know we touched
It's in our
upon it.
plan.
We
It's in
touched
our
upon
plan.
it. It is in the
It's
plan.
part
but
of their
we
plan for
did
the
talk about
renovation.
it. And we did do a site walkthrough on the library and discussion that was discussed.
I mean, not
Um,
every school has a
but-
computer lab.
But I think Ms. Jacobson said it right. I think trying to estimate that far out, you're putting yourself in a little double-edged sword, that's what you
Yeah.
called it, so.
Yeah.
We're also a little tight on space to try to do.
Well,
a
that's where I
computer
wasn't
lab
sure.
there.
Obviously, what you're talking about is trying to do it through the operating budget. So I wasn't sure of the nature of some of the fixes discussed, but we don't have that information here. So
My guess
Okay.
is a computer lab was not currently part of that.
just wanted to ask. Okay, Mrs. Jacobson?
The Sherman BMS controls, that's a new project that's on here in 2035, 36. I just wanted to know what is that number, and this might be a follow-up, Mr. Testani, that's way escalated out in the future years. So I'm just wondering what the base of that number is minus the escalation out. So confirming that this estimate is much lower today and that most of this is escalation. Just interested in that. And I assume that that's because at that point, the HVAC system that was installed in phase 3 of Sherman will be in need of new controls on it at that point. So I'm not sure. The escalation on that. That's all I had for that, Mrs. Maxon Kelly.
Okay, anybody else? All right, Stratfield? Okay, the ECC, oh, sorry, Mrs. Flynn.
That's Stratfield, elevator replacement. I can't remember how long ago that was that we heard issues with that elevator. Maybe it was when the ECC moved in. Is that all resolved? Do you think that I don't know if facilities discussed this at all? It's one of the few elementary schools that has an elevator, just if there are any ongoing issues. It looks far out to me and it's a big number.
We haven't had any issues at Stratfield's in the last few years.
Dreamy.
No.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
No, yeah, knock on all the things.
Yeah,
Just
I know. I
making
was
sure
just
I
gonna
wasn't
say,
remembering wrong.
Monday we'll have an issue.
Sorry.
Mrs. Jacobson?
Just what was the source of the 100% increase in this number? Last year it was on for 391. Now it's on for 783. That's a very large increase, almost more than double. Was there an expansion of scope or?
No, this is to reflect current market conditions and construction cost estimates.
Okay. ECC? Fairfield Woods? Mrs. Flynn?
At the end of last year, there were a lot of we call them kerfuffles over at Woods. Are all those taken care of
The
that aren't listed on here?
The parking lots was, I believe, completed today, the paving. The grease trap project, we're delayed in the completion of it for a couple of weeks because they're waiting on a certain part that was custom made for the install. But so we'll be starting the year as we ended the year, but in a couple of weeks we'll be fully completed there. The fire alarm system was replaced. It is now one uniform system. It was tested. It passed inspection. It is up and operable. That was 2 weeks ago. There was a lot of complications, but everything is now one uniform system.
And that'll all be covered at the next meeting in terms of the summer maintenance projects.
Correct. And today we've passed inspection at Roger Ludlow Middle School for the new fire alarm system, so that now, and we passed inspection on the sprinkler system at Ludlow High School. So all those are up and running and will not have any impact on the start of school.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, Roger Ludlow? None. Tomlinson? Mrs. Jacobson?
Sorry, Tomlinson. The boilers. $1.5 million. All 3 boiler burners. I just wanted to verify that that number is for all 3. Those were all installed in around 2000. So my follow-up question is that for a replacement of all of them, or is it just a subset? So that could be a follow-up question on the number of the boilers.
Okay.
There's no need to get from me right now. I can submit these. I just was looking, there's multiple boilers there. I just want to make sure find out if that's covered for all of them at that point.
Anything else? Mrs. Jacobson?
I'm not on Tomlinson.
Okay, anybody else for Tomlinson?
Did we do Woods already?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
Did you have a question?
Yeah,
That's where Mrs. Flynn asked about the,
I'm sorry.
oh, that's okay. Question?
Going back to Woods. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about my obsession with boilers. The Woods boilers are being pushed out 6 years from last year. They're 1996 boilers that are there. So just before I get to the math for a second, to Mr. Lee, why were those pushed out so far, knowing the age of those boilers?
They actually did a comprehensive inspection on it, and they found that the existing boilers are in good condition, and they feel strongly that it's reliable, and they'll be able to push it out a little longer.
All right, it's just a bit of a concern for me. I went back and looked at all of our boilers that have been replaced at other buildings, and they were all in the like the mid-20s or so of age. And I get worried about boilers because when they go, they're a very large, unbudgeted emergency. So I'd like to have a little bit better understanding of that. These are very old. We have more HVAC coming on in that building. So I want to feel a little bit more comfortable about that. The woods and then the amount. Mr. Testani, do you know what the escalation factor is on that's being utilized? I know the Board of Finance always asks that question too. So if you move one thing to the right, how much does it go up?
I'm not sure, and I can ask him. I did get clarification that the boilers at Tomlinson are all three.
Oh, thank you. Yay. Okay.
I know in the past he used 4% as the escalation.
I think that's old. I think that
Yeah.
we were up to like 6,
Right.
8%. I think that's gonna help me on this a little bit. The because we're pushing it out 6 years, but it's only going up like not even $300,000. Do you know what I mean? And so if I'm doing an interest on that bait, I mean if it's like 6, 8%, um, it seems like I'm coming up with somewhere between 1.7 something and 1.9. So, just wanted to verify what percentage we're doing on the escalation on those boilers for that many years.
Anything else on woods?
Sorry.
No, quite all right. Okay, next we're at Fairfield Ludlow High School. Nope, we already did Tomlinson. Okay, Mrs. Flynn?
Just a clarification on the use of the word rehabilitation for the auditorium. Is the word reason that's used instead of upgrade because of any restrictions we have, because of the age of that building or things that we need to do around that building? I know that auditorium looks a little bit different than our other auditorium. Is it the seat? I know everything in there looks, I want to use the word historical. I don't know if I'm like.
On Mr.
pushing-
Papajor's memo, he references as restoration, so I'm
Restoration,
not
so I-
positive if it was a,
Yeah, so
intentional word.
maybe just I would some insight into facilities. If that restoration has any requirements for us historically in that building, I would be curious to hear. It's the first time I've seen that word used versus like upgrade. You know what I mean, Mr. Lee?
No, I understand. I know we discussed it briefly, more on the actual investigation, what needs to be,
Yeah.
because all the antique stuff that,
Mhm.
or antique looking stuff.
Yeah, there's
that's
like
in there.
murals and things in there.
Yeah.
I would just want to make sure, like I said, that building is obviously a treasure in town. And if we need to consult with anybody or make sure we're doing it the proper way, that I'm sure you guys are, but the word was noticeable to me.
The escalation is he's going to confirm. I think he said they're using 8%.
But could we just check on that number then, the 1.5, because it doesn't seem to make sense then.
Fairfield Ludlow High School. Okay, Mrs. Jacobson?
I asked about the turf project already for more
Mhm.
detail on that. But the partial roof replacement in combination with the HVAC project, just to clarify, we've had roof projects that were out on the waterfall, but because we were doing the HVAC, we pulled them forward because of that process. Looking to confirm that this roof project does not need to be done prior to or in conjunction with the HVAC project. And that doesn't need to be an answer now. It's just a consideration that it has nothing, it's like a part of the building that's already not gonna get something, or I don't know why. I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss that if it needed to be pulled forward at all. Elevators, I don't need to talk about, the parking and paving. So I just have a question on the HVAC project. So given when we get to Ward that this number for Ward has so significantly increased, Mr. Lee, why is the number, so I assume that you got information that the Ward project is just the same number as it's always been.
For right now, I don't think anything's been changed until, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're keeping those numbers as is until we can get the approval. We're assuming the numbers will go down. I don't know if
Down?
Well, if you move the project up, it should go down.
No, I'm talking about Ludlow. Oh, sorry. I said unlike Ward, I meant to say unlike Ward's significant increase, Ludlow's and Walter Fitz, when we get there, are the same number. So I guess I'll just be clearer. Did you get updated numbers or confirm that these are still the numbers with the HVAC committee
We
for
did not-
Ludlow?
We
Okay.
did not get,
Correct me if I'm wrong, the Ludlow number didn't move. That's why it didn't
Correct.
change. The whole point was that they've got an 18-month lull of a building committee doing nothing, so this was slid up.
You're
So
talking about
look-
Ward?
Correct.
correct.
But yeah, but it went up, even though it was being pulled forward. It didn't go down.
No, and so I've
The
written down
cost.
why didn't that number for Ward change? But Ludlow's didn't change because it didn't move.
I'm not sure that that's correct, though. I'm sure it didn't change because it hasn't been asked for an update. Is that correct?
I'm not sure, but that could be accurate.
Yeah, because I watched the HVAC building committee and they had said that FPS reached out to get an up neighbor on Ward, but they didn't mention Walter Fitzgerald or FLHS.
Correct.
Okay, so can we get the updated number for both those schools as well?
I'll ask Angelus to request it.
Yeah, because that's going to be pretty important from a cash flow basis, especially as we're trying to sandwich all of these HVAC projects and Jennings. Because if it has the same increase as Ward, that's going to be,
A lot of money.
and also for Walter Fitz.
Correct.
So from a cash flow basis, it's important for us to understand everything on here. That needs to be updated. Thank you, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly. That's all I had on that.
Okay. Anybody else for Ludlow? Mr. Krasnov?
Just a general statement, Mr. Papa George had said doing some of these projects in conjunction may actually yield a cost savings. He didn't know the exact number yet, but being able to do, whether it's Dwight and Ward or whatever, as long as projects were in conjunction and they were doing multiple HVAC orders, having teams on at one school that they could maybe send to the other school, he did feel that there might be some cost savings.
Well, that has to go out to bid. It might not even be the same people.
Well, no, because you have a building committee, the HVAC IAQ committe,
For those, but not for
Isn't-
Jennings.
not for James.
I
Jennings
Mr.
was-
Lee,
just-
I
just make
wasn't
sure-
talking about
Mr. Lee,
Jennings.
just make sure you use the microphone.
Thought it was, sorry. No, Jennings, he mentioned that because we're gonna do the all thing through the state again, you're gonna need to set up a building committee and take that next step.
Okay. Fairfield Ward? Mrs. Flynn?
This is a very small question clarification. When I saw the word field house, I thought I was gonna see a super, really, really big number. If anyone's who's been in town, who's been talking about field space and efficiency, a indoor field house has been very, very, very high on the list. And I would just encourage, it looks like that's more of like a storage bathroom. I would just match the name with that, because I was very excited to see field house on here, but this isn't a field house. A field house is like an indoor field. Like I grew up in Wilton, we had a field house. This isn't a field house. This is like a
I don't
storage.
know what that,
I would just,
Mr. Krasnov?
just a
Sorry,
clarification.
hold on. I apologize.
I said the exact same thing. I said it made no sense, but that's what they're calling it right now for the
Field
project.
storage. For
But
field
it's
storage.
more storage space.
It should be
It's
changed.
not a
Yeah,
field house.
I would heavily encourage that to be
I-
changed. It's not a field house.
I agree with you.
Yes, Mrs. Jacobson?
Mr. Testani, I'm looking to confirm that the renovate bathrooms number has been updated for Ward, just because when we did Ludlow's, ended up needing to add a significant amount of money on that. So is that an updated, estimated from a professional estimate on the Ward bathrooms?
I'll double check, but I don't think so.
Yeah, we might want to look at that. So just, I guess, let me just overall, Mr. Lee, did you guys go through every single number on this waterfall and assure that they had all been updated with current estimates?
we went through just the top 10 changes that he made at the time.
So we didn't
We
confirm
didn't
that?
confirm the
okay.
other numbers.
Okay. It's probably going to be important for the town from our cash flow perspective, but yeah, so just that's, and bathrooms are important. The artificial turf, I don't have any questions on that. Same question on the roof, Mr. Testani. There's one out there after at least currently the HVAC. So I just want to make sure that that roof isn't pertinent to the HVAC project at the same time. And then the HVAC upgrade, I've read or I've heard some of the rationale about this. I don't think that a more complicated project is necessarily the one to run away from. There's been a lot of concern, and everyone knows, like historically on record, I would have put all the HVAC projects in one column. when we got these items and done them all in one fell swoop if we could, but we can't. There's a lot of concerns on that third floor at Ludlow for many, many, many years. It looks like per this waterfall, unless we get a number, we could do Walter Fitzgerald and Ludlow together and do two facilities or two of our high schools at the same time for less. And I know that they all need to get done. It's just a matter of prioritization. So one of my questions is, in trying to do some objective criteria here, is did the facilities committee go back and revisit our commissioning reports and all of the air quality results for Walter Fitz, Jennings, Ward, and Ludlow as a part of your considerations on the resequencing of these projects?
No, we did not at the time.
Okay.
And I believe this was also coming at the recommendation of the HVAC committee, correct?
It went from the HVAC committee and Mr. Papa George telling us, because again, if we leave everything as is, you do have a committee and their vendors sitting around for 18 months. So yes, they understand that logo needs to be done and Walter Fitz. However, the Ward project is the simple, if you want to call it simpler of the two, is simpler, can be done quicker, but you're not missing anything, because when that project is done, you're still in line with Ludlow and
Is
Walter
it
Fitz.
possible to provide any questions to the chair of the HVAC committee? I'd like to understand and have that conversation.
I had actually asked if he could be here today and he wasn't, I guess, able to, but we can,
We had
Hopefully
requested the
that's-
chair of the committee and a rep from the from
Colliers.
Colliers, and I was told yesterday that one possibly would be here, but obviously neither one did.
No
Make it.
problem, I understand. And I understand from an ease perspective or whatnot. But there's other considerations on this for me, and especially until we figure out what we're doing with Jennings. I mean, to me, that's just priority number one. So if something needs to fit, it's that building over everything else, because it doesn't have any mechanical means of fresh air, period. And I just don't like that gap at all for that building, whereas the other schools do have it. And again, they all need to get done. It's a matter of how much we can fit in our cash flow. So that would be great if they could come, or we can provide some greater detail around that recommendation from them and some of the concerns on our, again, I'm going to point to the commissioning reports posted on our websites for all four of these buildings, and there are differences. So that's a consideration for me, but thank you, and I appreciate asking them to come. That would be great, because this is a really important decision for us to make. Thank you.
Mrs. Flynn.
Just a quick follow-up through the chair to Mr. Lee. And please excuse my ignorance on this. The HVAC committee, would they have any insight into Jennings or discuss Jennings?
They will not.
So this is where I think it's a little bit important, just like that recommendation is a little bit in a silo, the intent of that silo is not bad. They're operating from their efficiency standpoint. I think the harder problem is the 9 of us are charged with a larger perspective to be, so maybe just make sure we're including that in the
No,
conversation.
I totally, we discussed that and we understand it. We can keep it as is. We have the right to keep it as is and not touch anything. The feeling was then you do have a building committee that's stagnant and the vendors that's been approved already doing nothing for 18 months.
Okay, Mr. Krasnoff?
From the chair to Mr. Lee, I believe there was also a concern about a building committee that wasn't doing something for a certain amount of time, like it becomes an issue or something. You might have to go to a new committee. Didn't you mention something like that? Oh, okay.
Because you're not closing out the building committee, so in essence, you can have a building committee
stay
open
open.
forever, yeah.
And if someone leaves, they leave and
They
they don't
leave
get
and
replaced.
they have to replace
Or
that
you have
person
to.
as long as you have enough, correct?
Got it. Thanks.
All right, Walter Fitzgerald? Mrs. Jacobson?
I was just going through some of the tiered maintenance lists, and there's a few items like bathrooms and some windows over there for Walter Fitzgerald. They're currently estimated not low, so that might be why they're on the maintenance list and not on the waterfall for bonding. But was there any discussion of any other needs at Walter Fitzgerald while we're there? Because there are some identified needs in other areas and they weren't included here. So I'm not really asking a question, but there's some windows and bathroom work over there. So I don't know if somehow in the future as we get to, or whatever we're going to do, if that could somewhat be combined with this. So maybe not in bonding, but thank you.
Okay. Any final questions? Mrs. Jacobson?
So we go to our column for this year. And this is a question, it might be a follow-up, Mr. Lee. I assume you guys went through the cash flow. So last year, our cash flow for this year of items was, our overall ask was going to be about $3.3 million and about $22 million in cash flow. It's going to $62.7 million as proposed from the 3.3. And do you have a cash flow number for this year? You guys go over the cash flow?
Did not, we have not.
Okay. Could that be an item that we get provided, Mr. Testani, possibly, like as soon as possible, but also just posted for the next meeting? All of this sits in, this document is, just for people who know, this document is kind of less important to the town than the cash flow. Because this document is just the years and the estimated amounts of our approvals and what we're estimating on reimbursement. What the town uses is how the things are bonded out over time and the cash flow due to the bonding cap and things like that. So based on this $62 million and just going out, just how does everything fit in? And I know there's an opportunity gap here because we got so much more money for Dwight. So there is an opportunity to fill up more this year than we anticipated. And for the next few years as that project moves through, and that would just be helpful to understand on a cash flow basis. So just a request if we could get the cash flow per this current waterfall that's been proposed by the Facilities Committee to us.
Okay, I will check. I know that, was it last year? Seems like maybe longer. We combined the town projects and the Board of Ed projects. I know they had put that one document together to have everything
We had
fit.
ours too, though, separately from last year, so
Yep.
I just pulled that out. Just to understand. Yeah, exactly. So they end up combining it with the town, obviously. I do kind of love, though, for consideration that they have this notes column. Because it could be interesting to cut down on questions too, is it's a new project, or it changed from this year to this year, or it decreased this amount, or it increased that amount, might be helpful for the town too, because it looks like they're putting in those notes anyway on our behalf, but just for us, it might be helpful. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so this will be a voting item at our next meeting. Now moving on to agenda item 7C, first reading of the draft capital and non-recurring projects 2027-2028, dated August 19th, 2026. This is enclosure number 6. Once again, well, I'm not sure how many questions remain after that discussion, but I assume we've got the 4 major projects, so we'll just take them one at a time. So the first non-recurring project for Stratfield Elementary. Any questions? Seeing none, looking at the capital projects for Jennings Elementary, obviously we have significant questions regarding how that seed money was factored, but anything else regarding Jennings, Mrs. Flynn?
If I could just ask on page 9, in the second paragraph, that first sentence, I'm just going to read. So it reads, the request is to receive funding to initiate the planning and evaluation process for a potential addition and renovation project at Jennings Elementary School. That use of the word potential, I'm just curious, are you guys saying that the addition is potential or that the addition and renovation project is potential? What's the intent of the use of that word?
I believe it's tied to the addition.
I would highly encourage, if that's the case, to flip that. Because the way I read that reads a little bit differently. And I think you're just going to clarify that for the public that the renovation project is not potential. But if that's the intent. Unless you're considering, I'm not even going to say it out loud.
Hold on.
Does that make sense?
Your point makes sense. Anything else for Jennings?
That's it.
Okay, Mr. Krasnoff?
In terms of that, when it said potential addition, I think that's referring to more than just the ECC. We have been discussing whether we're going to need extra space, whether it's a second floor or something else in terms of extra classrooms.
Okay.
I believe that's what he's referring to.
I would again.
I understood your point, Mrs. Flynn.
Irregardless, I think that as a member of this board, the way I read that was when you put that word potential in front of addition and renovation, it makes both of those potential. Or
Yeah, I think he used the word potential because until it's approved,
Yeah,
You
that's,
don't-
There's
you
no
don't know.
project. It's a potential project right now. It's just an idea. But I'll just clarify with him, because that's the way I would read it, that it's a potential renovation and addition. It's not, there's no project to say it's actually gonna happen yet.
Yeah, but we don't, like, for instance, for the turf field on page 10, we say this project, not this potential project.
Well, we have to replace what's there because it's a hazard. It's dangerous. We're
I
not
think-
I mean, we could do nothing at Jennings and just, I mean, the building still operates. I think that's the reason why he's saying potential, but I'll clarify with
Yeah,
him.
I just think as a body of 9, I wouldn't be comfortable sending, to me, the language seems a little haphazard in terms of if we vote and put our stance behind it, it's not a potential project. It's something that we are moving forward to the other town bodies. That's how I would read it as a member of it, but that's just me.
I'm not sure I'd call it haphazard, but I definitely understand your point. Are
It
you
was a
all
quick-
set?
It was a quick word. Thank you.
Mrs. Jacobson?
thank you. So this is not the first time that we've done initial feeding, but I'm going to go through this backup and no other project team initial funding request included that language. Mr. Lee, can you help me understand, in the second paragraph here, the study would include the formation of a building committee and the engagement of professional consultants to evaluate all potential options and scenarios. What is all potential options and scenarios for this site? I think that that needs to be spelled out in here, similar to what the town did. So what are all potential options? And because the waterfall is a renovation and addition. Fairfield has normed inaccurate language. It's really a major alteration and extension in statutory language. However, what you have on here for us to vote on the waterfall is a renovation and addition, which we all know the $49 million is based on renovating the existing building, adding the K-5 deficiency spaces, and adding ECC. That's what the $49 million is based on. So we're voting on one number and item, but yet I've got all potential options and scenarios. So to me, the 14 points plan does not match the waterfall.
I think when you get a building committee, with that seed money, they're finding not just one potential, right? They're gonna look at a few different potentials and see what best fits the situation at hand over at Jennings. We know we have to add the ECC, but where are you gonna put it? And can you put it here? Can you put it there? So you have two different scenarios. And like Mr.
Okay, so maybe it would be helpful if we clarified that sentence. The study would include the formulation of a building committee and the engagement of professional consultants to evaluate all potential options and scenarios for the renovation and addition project. Correct? Per the waterfall?
Sure.
Does that make, because when you say all potential options and scenarios, I find a disconnect between that and the waterfall. So I'll move on with that idea. We already went into the dollar amount and all of that. What I wanted to get into was this is going to take us through design documentation and specifications, correct? So you're going to do all options and scenarios. How do you get to the design documentation and specs?
Are you asking what the board discussion would be prior to the building
No,
committee
in
taking
this
it?
14 points plan, where is that described in here? Again, the name potential. The purpose of this request is to provide seed funding, which is initial funding to support. Seed funding is for an approved project to go to design, doc, and spec. That's what initial funding is for. If it's an exploratory issue, then it shouldn't belong in the Jennings line item, and it would be a separate line item. So just to clarify, this is initial funding on an addition and renovation project to go to design docs to get the specifications in order to provide a better estimate for the town, correct?
Correct.
Great. That's awesome. However, the building committee piece. And I'll go quick, and just a little bit more history, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, that you'll remember. In January of 2018, this board went to the Board of Selectmen with a 1.5 initial funding request for Mill Hill. We did not have a bed spec, and they sent us packing home, resoundingly, unanimously rejected it. Come back to us when you have more information on what project you're doing. Do we know that the $5 million is very much so in question? However, any amount of initial feeding without greater detail or to guide a building committee, there is no building committee that's never had an ed spec. So do we know that can get $5 million or some amount of millions of dollars without greater detail on this board doing its work on what we're trying to put forward?
We have the partial ed spec from the last facilities committee is what my goal is to use, especially for the ECC and what we did. That was the reason why we did those ed specs back there.
I think to be clear, we don't have an answer to that question.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
we don't know that.
So
So
what happened is we rolled up our sleeves, we got the ed spec done in a few weeks, we went back in 3 weeks later, we had the ed spec, that includes enrollment projections, we had a timeline of the project estimation that obviously the $1.5 million was broken down into line items, what they were paying for. So just a lot of like backup I feel like is missing from this, if we have any hope or prayer of doing that. And so perhaps we can giddy up and do some of that. So the ed spec, I hear what you're saying from should be easy because we did like
Correct.
the
We-
heavy lift last year.
Right.
It's just a matter of translating that to different deficiencies for Jennings that they have versus what Dwight had, which is in our long. It's pretty simple to do. It's just a matter of doing it, you know. And I don't know if that's something that you want to do before we meet or have a special meeting on that. I don't know if there's some communication with the town, but I highly doubt someone's gonna say, well, here's $5 million, you don't have an ed spec, if the $1 million isn't broken down, we don't have any backup, you know. Maybe they will, I don't know. But,
I'm sure by the time
it would be
goes
hard
in
for
f-
me to support even that, because I don't really know what I'm voting on, do you know what I'm saying? So more detail would be great, and it could take, quicker to do. And then I won't take up any more time, Mrs. Mexon-Kennelly, but I would urge, the administration to go back through this very lengthy description, which is not, similar, but to take out things that we know have already been done or some sort of an explanation, because the town did just spend significant amount of time on Jennings, and we shouldn't be doing redundant work anyway. Like, you don't need a topography report for the site, because we already have that, for example. You know what I'm saying? So there are things that probably should be reevaluated in that. And again, it might help if we just have the breakdown of the dollars, and how that is different from what we already have. Thank you.
we noted.
all right, Mr. Krasnov.
Just to elaborate on it, we did discuss, once this gets approved by this board, we were gonna work on the ed specs while the process was going forward to the town, so we would be hopefully prepared with an ed spec.
But to Mrs. Jacobson's point, we wouldn't have it in time for the vote at our next meeting, which is when we're forwarding it on to the next stage of the discussion. So
Correct, because the seed, we would need to agree to push the seed funding, at least according to Mr. Papa George. He would like to know that we agreed to go for the seed funding before we started working on the ed specs, so,
and he may have had a discussion we don't know about.
yeah,
But
I,
he's not
again,
here, so, okay.
we are partially done with
Are you
ed
okay?
specs. It's just a matter of
Putting it on paper.
putting it on paper and moving some deficiencies around. It shouldn't take more than a day or two, to be honest.
Okay, Mrs. Flynn.
Yeah, I would just clarify, like I said, that everything, like the whole section on educational impact, like that to me seems like that should be work that's done by this board, by our committees before it goes anywhere. And decisions made there, like, I don't know how some of those decisions could be made by a building committee. I don't think that, like, if they start coming up with like multiple scenarios of plans, that's not their charge, that's ours. So I'm just worried that you're deferring work to a committee that's not in charge of, like, that's not charged to do it.
I think
Okay.
part of their job is to come back with different plans based on the charge we give them. If we say they need an ECC, yeah, do you have an ECC? Where are you gonna put it? Can it go here? Can it go here? I mean, that's what happened with Mill Hill also. You came back, got rejected the first time. The building committee came back with 3 different plans to show the Board of Ed and the other boards.
Just through the chair to Mr. Lee, I just think to Ms. Jacobson's point, for the broader 9 of us who, like I said, I took the time to read everything. I listened to 2 of your meetings. I'm pretty caught up on where you guys are, but this does not read like that all the time to me. So I think that the documents kind of need to match your intent before we send them off, because the Board of Selectmen is not going to have, I mean, like I said, I think we all read documents. We want to make sure everything matches.
Okay, anything else on Jennings? Mr. Krasnov.
Just one more thing for everyone to think about. We have been doing some work on just facility space and utilization, and we are, I think, a lot tighter than maybe some people on this board had thought. So just food for thought for Jennings, if the board does feel like we want to expand and be able to do things like hopefully lower cap size and stuff like that. It may be a discussion people want to have. I personally would love to see Jennings become a 504 or a bigger school if possible.
Okay. I don't want to start going down that road right now. So I think everyone is interested in the renovation. I think everyone is interested in the addition. I hear Mrs. Jacobson's point that have we done the work necessary to even ask for this money? A different point, Mrs. Flynn? Go ahead.
Thank you. I I was listening to the meeting where you guys discussed that. It was really difficult to follow along with the assertions that were being made without any backup. There was no physical.
Okay, but that'll be coming in 2 weeks.
But I'm just saying to discuss that and assert that there's room places, I would like to see that on paper. So the expectation is going to be if there's assertions made that there's room or not room, we need to have that documented.
Unfortunately.
Okay, all right, we're gonna stop, hold on right now.
What-
Right now, we're discussing this document, not something that we're gonna be talking about in 2 weeks, that right now, most of the majority of the board has nothing to look at to support that. I do appreciate the preview, Mr. Krasnoff, but that'll be a discussion for 2 weeks. All right, Fairfield Ludlow High School. Any questions? Mrs. Jacobson? Mrs. Jacobson, is your mic on?
I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm going to submit a bunch of follow-up questions on this project. I'd love to see a little bit more detail in this book around the upgrades of the restroom facilities and what that actually looks like, instead of just the word upgrades. So it's a little bit clearer to what we're voting on and presenting to the other boards. Was one of my ideas, in terms of possibly making this a little bit better and clearer. And then, again, I already spoke to the other things, just getting what the estimate was based on. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, the Fairfield Ward project. Mrs. Jacobson?
What is the source of the almost $10 million increase here? Sorry, I don't know who to ask. Am I asking you, Mr. Testani? So last year it was about 46 something on the waterfall.
Yeah, I think they just have better accurate estimates right now from projects that they've just completed. And I think to your
Our
point, that
projects the other phase one projects, I believe, came in with under budget.
they did.
So I guess, so can we get, I know you're
think-
having to have them just, I'd like some backup on the increase, like what is the difference?
Sure.
Especially since we're pulling this proposal anyway, is to pull this forward by 4 years. I would expect to see a significant decrease. Because the new baseline on that, if you're using 8%, is would be $35 million, which really puts this at an almost $19 million increase.
Yeah, that's why I was hopeful yesterday that someone was coming tonight to help answer some of these questions. And I'm a little disappointed that we didn't find out until the meeting that no one was coming. So I think having them here to give us not only an explanation as to why they want to move the project up, but on the costs is going to be helpful for everyone.
Yeah, I think they sent over like 3 different people, like B&L, Gilbane, something like that. They said sent over documentation, so maybe that's something that we can get that would be helpful on that. And that's all I have on that question.
Anyone
At
else
this
on
point.
Fairfield Ward? Okay, all right, so obviously we need a lot more information before we do this discussion and voting at our next meeting. And so I believe I took plenty of notes. I know Mr. Testani took plenty of notes. So Mrs. Jacobson?
Just for your consideration, there could be a lot of changes on this based on some of the feedback on this. Just on some of the numbers that we know that have to be updated at the very least for consideration, either revised first read or possibly like last year we had a special meeting on
Yeah.
this where we workshopped a lot of it and we're able to give it its due attention in between the vote. So more than happy to do that. usually, like last year, this meeting was just review and feedback and questions. It wasn't a first read, which gave us all a little bit more time, and I think the administration a little bit more time. But floating the idea that we might need something like that, and would be welcome to you suggesting it to the board.
I agree, and I appreciate your suggesting that. Again, it's hard without knowing what the answers to, the answers may satisfy us. On the other hand, they may not. So I appreciate that point. Thank you. Moving on to item 7D, the fourth quarter financial report, enclosures 7 and 8. And Mr. McNeary, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to go over what everybody has for the quarterly report, it's the standard documents that I provide. There is one extra that I'll note, but you have the memo that I typically write. Nothing's really changing of the drivers of the surplus. Statement of the account summary by major classification. You have all the accounts by major classification. Report on the grants, and then enclosure number 8 is a worksheet that I thought would be helpful in just talking about the surplus and kind of transfers. So I'll just go over the top line heading which is the final surplus is 2,257,563. Like I said, a lot of the other parts of the memo are things that we've been talking about at other quarterly meetings. So I will pause there for questions, unless you would like me to continue.
Any initial questions before Mr. McNeary keeps going? Okay, go ahead.
So I'm referencing enclosure number 8 now, which is titled Fairfield Public Schools Year-End Transfer Worksheet. So for reading this from left to right, you have all the major categories listed, their original budgets, their actual expenditures, and then the fourth column from the left is basically your surplus deficits in each of those lines. In Q3, we did make transfers in anticipation that we would have a surplus. So we did make transfers that you have already approved. Those are called transfers number 1 through 5. And the subtotals are shown. And then there's a kind of light red column that says the amount that's yet to be authorized to transfer. And those are the board transfers that I'm going to be presenting before you tonight. So you have 2 transfers that are in the agenda to approve. One is just the typical year-end budget transfers, and the other is a transfer of the surplus into the non-lapsing account. And I can pause there for any questions, or I can continue.
And again, keeping in mind that we'll be having the separate agenda item of the budget transfers. So, especially with a focus right now on the overall Q4 report. Mrs. Flynn?
There's a little cart before the horse because we haven't seen it. Was there any discussion of utilizing any of that 2.2 to cover any of the summer maintenance or any other year-end expenses, pre-purchasing, anything like that before putting it into the non-lapsing?
Yeah, so if you look at that light red column, there's surpluses and deficits. The net of that is 2,257. If you just took the surplus lines, there would be 2.7 million of a surplus. So 442,911, which is the first transfer, it was our transfers to cover various maintenance or security related projects. So that's related to the first budget transfer. So it would have been higher had we not done that.
Okay.
Anyway, Mrs. Jacobson.
I'm not going to go line by line on the actual detail here, although I did read every line of it. I did notice that in the Q4 you have added an account for the unexpended transfer out funds.
Yes.
Is that just because you have to have a place to hold it right now?
Yeah, so the procedure is that you're going to vote to transfer all the surpluses from various categories to the support expenses category, which is where that line sits. And then the budget is going to be, for that line, is going to be increased by 2.2 million, and then we will make the transfer from that line to a separate fund.
So you just included in that so that you would have a place to put it?
Yes,
at
correct.
this
Yeah,
point?
sorry, that's my long-winded way of saying this. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the Q4 report? And again, thank you for the memo, the cover memo. I think it's very helpful for having to explain how we ended where we did. Anyone else? Mrs. Jacobson.
On the grant funding,
Sure.
and I apologize, I was focused on a lot of other things today, but anything funky with our federal or state funds that you noticed?
Not at this time, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I am looking.
I've heard that some things are on hold, like, I guess that would be for this year then, so it's probably not pertinent to this
Yeah,
report.
I mean, because you brought it up, I know you have I know you do a lot of research in that area, so I will talk with the staff that manage the grants and see if they know of anything and then
That's
prepare that.
been held up or whatnot. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Okay, going. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7E, approval of policy 3170.1, unexpended education funds account. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve policy 3170.1, unexpected education funds account. Moved by Mr. Lee, seconded by Mrs. Bardenwerper. So this, as you see here as enclosure 9, this was something that I pushed the policy committee to do. I said back when we were first discussing the idea of this non-lapsing account, which we're not going to be calling the unexpected education funds account, that it was my belief that the board would be keenly interested if we're going to have such account, then that we would want a policy to accompany it. So again, thank you to Mr. Magneri for his work on this. There is also the accompanying enclosure number 10, which additionally helps to explain some of the wording within the policy. We are looking for this to be a one and done. And so at this point, are there any questions? Again, this is enclosures 9 and 10. Mrs. Jacobson.
Appreciate this question, I hope. The first one anyway.
If it's about a comma, I don't appreciate it. No.
No. That was somebody else's comma trauma. Okay. The title of this new policy is unexpended education funds account, but throughout the policy, you refer to it as a non-lapsing account.
True. And I
So
think
someone's gonna go look for it, like friendly amendment, unexpended, non-lapsing, like something that like actually identifies it per the language. So that's just my first thought right there.
So in response to that, all I'd say is that we found that within the policy, we resorted to, we, always fell back on the terminology that we had been using. For how many years have we been talking about this notion of a non-lapsing account? So I will admit that when we were having the policy discussion, we just reverted to that. I completely hear your point regarding consistency of language.
I'll get into more substantive items now here. The middle paragraph, you might appreciate this too, because I'm going back to some policy stuff. There was a point in time in a totally different context that I asked in policy about something totally different. In the absence of statutory language, do we get to just make up our own? You remember what I'm referring to. Dr. Zavajan, yeah, he's here. They ran it up legal, and so, long story short, no. We don't have the authority to make up things. So the middle paragraph isn't found in statute. This is kind of made up, sorry, bless you, made up language meant to somewhat constrain the expenditures from this account. Do we know that we can make up this language and are not subject to simply following what the statute says, which is only for educational purposes, like period, so to speak?
We did look into the matter of educational purposes, but Mr. Magneri is the one who had the conversation, so I'll let you speak to it.
Yeah, I don't think this would be something that we couldn't include in the policy because ultimately it's not restricting what the legislation allows you to do. When it came, I did ask about, what are considered education expenses. And essentially, they said that there's strong support for things that may be indirectly related to education that could be considered education expenses. So to that extent, I don't think this middle paragraph would be a problem.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll also say regarding that middle paragraph, a very important consideration for the policy committee anyway was the idea of creating cliffs. We thought this was also the language that was the most responsive to what the Board of Finance has indicated support for.
And Madam Chair, I'll just add that when I did go to the Board of Finance and discuss this with them, and I asked them, this was kind of avoiding creating a cliff was one of the guidelines that they did give us. So.
Yep. I mean, guideline is a guideline. Yeah. We can do what we want. At the end of the day, here's my concern. Let me just ask one more question. Can you clarify the $5 million?
We just batted around numbers a bit. So if that's something people were interested in changing, we just wanted to have something down again, just to indicate this is not the idea of this growing this sizable pool of money and then nothing happens with it. The point is taxpayers approved it, all of the other taxpayers funded it. All of the town boards would have approved this money for us. The idea was not that it should sit there and keep pooling. The idea is it should be spent on the needs of the district. So we wanted to put something in there, but I can't say that it was the most scientific, ultimately settled on number. So if that's something people were interested in changing, I'd love to hear suggestions.
I'll just add that in the legislation, whether there's this cap here, there is ultimately a
Yes.
cap. It's a percentage of operating budget. So if this cap did not exist, once again, we can put this cap in because it's below the cap, the maximum cap that the state allows. But we would be capped 2% of operating budget, I think.
Which it's the preceding sentence.
Yeah.
Well, that's the amount going in on an annual basis. I don't
Right.
think there is a cap in statute on how large you can let it grow.
No, that was very
Yeah.
much something that
Which
came
is-
from the policy committee. And also, I apologize, this also went through the finance, I'm on both, so I conflated the two. That was actually, a lot of that discussion was in finance committee. So that was where the interest was in, this is not meant to just have this growing pool. It was approved for the Board of Ed to spend on educational needs. It shouldn't keep growing.
Definitely not. And then the last question, and perhaps this is also through you to the CFO. Because we didn't make this at the end of June during the fiscal year, and the fiscal year has now closed, and I know that the state has requested that the non-lapsing report that we have to do was due no later than August 21st, 2025. So it indicates some sort of a window to me because of that due date. Do we know that we can do this at this point in time?
Yes, the state did request a report. I asked them if they had a template. They said a memo would suffice. I told them that you were not voting on this until after the deadline. The guidance that was relayed to me was that I can put that, first of all, these are unaudited numbers. Things can change in the audit, so things can always change in an audit. So that would be number one, and subject to your approval. So I included that in the memo to the state. And I told them, I gave them the total number that's in the memo here, but I told them if
So
anything
you did
changed that I would
you did
update the memo.
submit the report,
Yes,
subject to pending approval.
correct.
All right. So thank you for the questions. I appreciate from the policy and technical standpoints, and thank you for those technical questions as well. Look, I went to the policy committee, and I mean, I know that I spent time on that. I have serious concerns on this idea of gathering money in a savings account when we know, and everyone knows here, that there's a laundry list of known and identified need in this district. I also feel strongly that districts do end up somehow getting penalized for that. Not that I'm saying that that will happen here, but it is a concern. We have a lot of needs for our students and buildings right now. And if everything was completely up to snuff, I might feel differently. But knowing that that is the case, I don't believe that we voted on a budget to educate the kids of Fairfield. And I'm not saying we didn't do that. I'm just saying that the money should be used now to address needs of the district and of students, rather than some unidentified time frame that I don't know when or how this money will be expended. So that's just my concern on it. I understand the rationale behind it. It's not that I don't. It's just that I feel we have a laundry list of needs, and a very large bonding request coming up that could be used for some of this money. So that just wanted to thank you for the questions. I appreciate it. Just wanted to put my feelings on it on record. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Flynn?
Thank you. Very much appreciate the work and the backups, very helpful. I'm gonna just share my thoughts too, just more from a philosophical standpoint. you know, when I see that number 5 million, we spend an entire month as a board going over our budget line by line. I went and looked today. We submitted hundreds of questions. We submitted hundreds of questions as a board, down to the minutia of how much we were spending on cell phone pouches, how much we're spending on intramural activities, down to my biggest problem with this is kind of the intent of that second paragraph. And while I appreciate the intent of the board members, I think what will happen is the vast majority of our budget is in people. And we say all the time, we want to support people. And yet we're going to move millions of dollars that were budgeted for people. A large chunk of this is coming from our FTE line, and move it to another line where we can't use it on people for the most part, I think. For me, it reads as one-time expenses, non-occurring. So when a boiler goes out, which we need to take care of, absolutely. And I think fiscally, we do a very good job of keeping our budget within line, but I'm really struggling with moving millions of dollars and not having an aim for what it's going to be used for at the moment. So I'm just struggling with that piece of it.
Okay, as one quick follow-up, it does say each expenditure from the account must be authorized by the board. So this is not directionless, monopoly money for the district's use. We're going to know about every expenditure that it is being spent on. Just want to clarify that.
Can I reply?
Sure.
Just in the language of it, it does really specify in that first sentence of the second paragraph where it wants it to go, though. This is intended to support one-time and non-recurring educational expenditures. So it's not intended to support staff, support boost, you know what I'm saying? It's not, the intent seems to be, in the way it's written, I read it like that. So that's how I read it.
And what I would argue is that any FTE, the people of this district, the ones who educate our children, we're making the argument for them in our operating budget in January. I would not feel that whatever pool of money there is here would in any way prevent me from saying these are the needs of the district, and this is the argument I will make to any town board of what we need to best educate our children. This is something very separate. I have been actually opposed to the idea of a non-lapsing account for years because I thought it would just be an excuse to cut us. And once we got the green light that the Board of Finance was keenly interested in our moving ahead with this, and we had their full support, and one of the main things that we heard was just do not create cliffs for yourself. Creating the ongoing cost of an FTE, this isn't going to stop me from arguing for the FTE that the district needs to run, but that's our January argument. And needless to say, it's not like the superintendent can't get someone during the school year on an as-needed basis, and it involves a budget transfer. So those things can happen, but this is I do think that wording is important so that this does not become a target for cuts. Because I very much believe it's going to have quite an allure as a target. So I think this is important that we say this. Mr. Lee.
Just a quick follow-up. So what will we consider, because we're going to end up having to vote on whatever comes out of the account, emergency boiler repair? What about seed money? It's a one-time, non-occurring account.
Yes. So just a few examples. I think the boiler is, a classic example and one that a lot of people leap to. Capital equipment purchases, building improvements, technology infrastructure, once again, one time. Startup costs for major software implementation, that would be one time. Disaster emergency costs. I think I already said equipment replacement, but it's not just subject to that example. I'll also say that, when I'm coming into the Q2 and Q3 report, all my numbers are estimates at the end of the day. And so if we're projecting a surplus at the end of Q2 or Q3, and we allocate that money to now spend to reduce the surplus to zero for whatever projects we want, and I turn out to be wrong, which can happen, then I would give you information that would have over leveraged the district. So not to say that we need $2 million as a backstop, but I think it's also a change in methodology and reports where I will be coming to you Depending on what happens with the non-lapsing account, things will change, but I can see myself coming to you Q2, Q3. If we haven't used any of that balance yet, then I would know that that's kind of off to the side. And if there were one-time maintenance projects that I know we could get ahead of earlier, I would not be as uncomfortable with the risk of over-leveraging the district and creating a deficit that wasn't there.
So to piggyback that, an overture, an overspend or an over on snow removal, would it come out of here or are we transferring?
Well, I think what we would do is in the current year, we would try to manage, depending on the size of the deficit, we would try to manage it with our existing budget and seeing where we can cover it in the existing budget. And then if there's nowhere else to go, then yes, this does say unforeseen budgetary circumstances. That would be one, and that could cover a snow overfall over and above what we could potentially cover within the general fund.
And Mr. Lee, to that point, one of the things we also explicitly discussed is in what way would this impact how we manage the district financially? And so what Mr. Magneri assured us of and Mr. Testani assured us of is it's not changing the functioning of the district. They'll try to manage those kind of budget shortfalls in categories as they have always done. It's not immediately looking, oh, we have this here, but it also could stop certain projects from being frozen, which is what we have frequently had to do when something is looking like we might have an issue with sped transportation, with other types of costs, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of maintenance projects get frozen because we have to make sure we can pay those bills. So the management will be the same. We're pretty much assured that yes, we know this is here, but we're not really going to talk seriously about this money until we get to Q3, and that's when it's okay. Now this is how we're going to manage it through to the end.
And you're comfortable with the 5 million, not to exceed 5 million?
That was what the finance committee had discussed, yes.
Again, not wanting a pool to just keep growing and growing, and that money is there for the kids. It's not, it's meant to be spent on the kids. Sure.
I think this is all great discussion, but since this is the first time that we're creating the non-lapsing account, I think we need to let some time play out in the current school year to see where we may need the money. Because again, we opened up more sections of elementary school. That includes not only teachers, it includes supplies, it includes curricular materials. I think we talked about it in the finance committee. Just in curricular materials, it's about $10,000 per classroom, that alone. So I think before we get ahead of ourselves, this money may go a lot quicker than we think in this year's budget. And I'm hopeful it doesn't. And that some of the things that Mrs. Jacobson mentioned, we can get ahead of some of those projects, boilers, as she mentioned, and things like that. But, and again, we made some cuts to transportation in the budget that were just sweeping cuts that didn't really have a reduction in students taking the bus. So we didn't extend walking distances. We made no changes to the policy at the request of the public. So I think we'll know more as Frank has mentioned after Q2 and definitely after Q3 before we start thinking that this is going to be a fund that's going to continue to grow. It's the first time we've had it. So I don't think this is going to be a common theme. I also think when Terry worked on the budget last year with me, I think some of the money in personnel wasn't in FTE, but I do think that there was a cushion in the dollar amount associated with the FTE from the prior CFO.
Mrs. Jacobson.
Thank you for those thoughts, and I appreciate that. Seeing how things go, and of course, policy can change on a dime, and we can change it if we do it to do whatever we want with it, or a future board can. I also think, so I appreciate that inner dialogue that you guys are having and looking how this comes, because it's the first time we're doing it. I also think the public's going to be like, dude, like, we have an issue. You guys have millions of dollars, like we should be addressing it. So like test scores are coming out next week, things like that. I'm going to give an update on something later on in committee updates, but I I think that the public is also going to help. It's their money that they were taxed on to educate the students of Fairfield. And if it's going to things like, from staff and people and support and things that, because I added it all up, and a vast majority of this money is from staff and benefits. But we're paying it for snow. I'm not sure how we would count that as going for the kids. So I think that there will also be an external pressure on this that's coming that we should anticipate as well.
I agree, and we lowered class sizes in several classrooms. We added 3 MRTs in 3 schools that needed additional math support. We've tried to be a lot cleaner in making sure that all our kindergartens have dedicated para support. And in the coming budget, we're going to see the need, presented in my budget for additional personnel for mental health support. So I think we're being responsible. I think the special education department, Rob and his team did a great job in contributing to some of this surplus as well. I wouldn't count on that happening, on a consistent basis.
Hold on, Mr. Krasnoff. I do want to follow up on one thing. I don't want it being said to the public that we took money from staff for snow removal. I understand that it's a number on paper, but we weren't filling certain positions that didn't need to be filled. That FTE savings was not something that, it's not that we needed this position and to save money because we needed to do some shoveling, that we just didn't hire a teacher. It was those personnel numbers is a reflection of the needs and what we needed to educate in the district. So, obviously if we've already created the account. The account was created in June. I was the one who had pushed that we need policy so that the will of the board, and I received no suggestions of amendments for it, could be there. And I do hear, as Mrs. Jacobson rightly pointed out, and hopefully everyone's getting comfortable with the role of policy, we can change this at any time if we're finding that it does not serve us well. But I think that this is a policy which will protect this money. It is what the Board of Finance was looking for, and I'm not going to believe that this money doesn't have a target on it until it does not come up in the 2027 budget discussions. But I do think that this is good faith towards what they've asked us to do, and I believe it will protect, and we will see what happens with that. Mr. Krasnoff.
Just to add something to all this, since I've been to the finance meetings, and I'm not going to necessarily speak for the Board of Finance, but it seemed like they wanted us to create this account because of how fiscally responsible and lean we have been working. And they understood that. They felt that this really wasn't that big of a surplus considering how large our budget is and that we do estimate it. So I really think this is almost good faith to us as well for how well we have been trying to manage our budget.
Okay. Any final comments? The only other thing I'll say, and I said it before, but I think it's important. If there is an FTE need for this district, I know I stand with all of you in that I'm willing to argue for that. So regardless of whatever is in this account, that's something all of us can go to bat for. But this is a voting item, so I'll go out to the public if anybody would like to comment on the policy 3170.1.
Good evening, Greg Bosch, 470 Jackman. I hope everybody had a wonderful summer. It's nice to see all of you. Connecticut General Statutes allows boards of education to place unexpected education funds in a non-lapsing account. The statute imposes 3 principal limitations. You can read about it in enclosure 10 this evening. The local board policy in front of you adds an additional restriction that the state of Connecticut does not require. Specifically, except in a fiscal emergency, these funds cannot be used for new recurring operating expenses, staffing costs, or other continuing financial obligations. I think the discussion here has been wonderful, but if somebody were to only see my public comment, I'm trying to provide enough background. My understanding from watching the Board of Finance and the Policy Committee and Finance Committee discussions is that paragraph 2 within the policy in front of you is largely added because of a concern that the funds could be used to create new staffing positions. I think we all agree on the facts that I've stated so far. This is where I disagree with some of the discussion here tonight. I urge this board respectfully not to give up the flexibility that the state of Connecticut offers you. The administration, our building principals, and this board are the people best positioned to determine the educational needs of this district. And those needs will not always be capital projects, one-time expenditures, or fiscal emergencies. Sometimes the greatest, most acute need may be a teacher. And between the previous Board of Education meeting at the end of last year and this one here tonight, we've recognized that fact. Paraprofessionals that support kindergarten classrooms, instructional supports, and other operating expenses. Circumstances also change. There are roughly 9 months between the development of the superintendent's proposed budget in January and the beginning of the fiscal year. Enrollment changes, student needs change, programs change. The teachers recently added in response to this board's revised class size policy are just the latest example of the emergent needs after a budget has already been passed. So I'm asking the board to do 3 things tonight very quickly. First, make this a first read, then adopting it tonight. My understanding is that it was received only at one policy committee discussion. Multiple board members are absent here tonight. The public doesn't have the opportunity to hear, first read and discuss, and people are on summer break. Second, remove the restriction on reoccurring expenditures and staffing and give the superintendent and central office the greatest flexibility with respect to these dollars. That doesn't mean, and I want to be very clear about this, that you have to spend the money on teachers. It means that you preserve your ability to do so, and that nobody can say, well, hold on, that money's already been earmarked or is restricted.
All right, Mr. Bosch.
I'll email you my third request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the public? Okay, back to the board. Any final comments, Mr. Lee?
Does Mr. Testani have any issues that if he needs it for teachers, he can't? Does he feel handcuffed in any of this?
Absolutely not. If we need a teacher, if we need a paraprofessional, if, a child moves into the district tomorrow and has needs that we are currently not staffed for, we do that. And then we make adjustments later on. And I think Frank said it the best. He said it just in terms of maintenance, that if the snow becomes too much and we go over budget, we'll make some adjustments and we'll make do first. I think he just used that as one example. It could be in any category. It could be in any circumstance within the budget that we'll make do first. And then we'll worry about if we need to tap into the non-lapsing account later. So I mean, we keep focusing on maintenance, but again, if tomorrow, unfortunately, we have to open up another classroom at Osborne Hill, we'll do that. I mean, there's nothing that's going to prohibit us to do that if it's the right thing for kids.
Okay, Mrs. Jacobson?
The policy as drafted does have an exception clause. So there aren't a lot of any definitions in this policy. So there may be instances where some of the language is interpreted to mean something other than what we anticipated. So there is an exception clause in here for unanticipated items past the budget. So perhaps that is going to be an area for flexibility. However, I'm still concerned on source of revenue to expenditure side. So to me, if the sources of revenue is a recurring item, then there isn't a cliff because it came from recurring. So just my final thoughts on that. Thank you.
Okay, any other final comments? All right, so we will take, sorry, I'm losing my papers. So we'll take a vote on the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve policy 3170.1 unexpected education funds account. All in favor, please.
Mrs. Bardenwerper, Mr. Lee, Mrs. Maxim Kennelly, Mr. Krasnoff. Those opposed, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn. Motion passes 4-2. Next, item 7F, approval of Q4 year-end budget transfers. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the transfer from and to various accounts to close the fiscal year per enclosure number 11. May I have the motion, please? Moved by Mr. Lee, seconded by Mrs. Flynn. So again, this is enclosure number 11. Any questions? Give you a second to find the paper. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, go out to the public. Anyone? None, coming back to the board. All those in favor? Mrs. Barnum-Werper, Mr. Lee, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Krasnoff, those opposed? Mrs. Flynn. Motion passes 4-1. Next item, item 7G, approval of transfer to the unexpended education funds account. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the transfer to the unexpected education funds account per enclosure number 12. Moved by Mr. Krasnoff, seconded by Mr. Lee. Any discussion? Again, this is enclosure number 12. Mrs. Flynn.
Just through the chair to Mr. Testani, you just referenced the increase in class sections as a result of the past amendment in our June meeting. Was there any thought of utilizing any of these dollars? How are we covering that variance right now?
Right now, we're just gonna cover it with the operating budget, and then as Mr. McNary mentioned earlier, we'll see how we project out, not necessarily in Q1, but Q2 probably will give us a little bit more of an accurate depiction on what impact that may have had on our personnel line.
So maybe we could get an update on that at the September meeting?
Well, we'll know the final
Yeah, the final
budget
number
impact
by
because
that
we'll know
first
how many
meeting. Okay.
sections we have.
Yeah, oh,
right?
so,
Yeah.
yeah, we can give you the update. I think he already provided what those additional
Yep.
teacher plus benefit costs were. And we talked about.
That was in the finance committee.
At the
Yep.
finance committee, and we also talked about what the supplies were.
Okay.
So we can get an overall number on what those sections cost.
Yeah, maybe just I had a chance to listen to finance, but maybe just like closing that loop for the full board and the
Yep.
public, just that information at the next meeting would be very helpful. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, going out to the public. Seeing none, back to the board. All those in favor? Ms. Bardenwerper, Mr. Lee, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Krasnoff, those opposed. Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, motion passes 4-2. Next, we have first reading of policy 4150, 4250, leaves and vacations, certified, non-certified, and enclosure number 13. Any questions? One thing I can say in speaking to this policy, this went through, Mrs. Bardenwerper can back me up on this, many iterations in policy. Every time we thought we were getting ready to move it along, staff gave us input that there were errors and that there had to be changes made. So this has been vetted by some HR staff. But if anyone has any questions, Mrs. Jacobson.
Why is there a variance between employees hired prior to July 126 and those after?
Can you just place me on the page?
Second paragraph. All
Yeah.
employees hired before or this, employees hired after or that.
That's the language that we were provided by the board attorney.
There must be a discrepancy then between the two.
Well, no, there hasn't been yet because, and this is one of the things that I was going to mention as we sit here. anyone hired since July 1st, this policy doesn't pertain to at the time of their hire. So I think that we should either
Change that date.
change the date to July 1st, 2027, maybe to give us a little bit of a runway. Or again, and I don't know what the intent was because I didn't sit through policy on this. We do eliminate the language at the discretion of the superintendent. And I'm going to use an example. If Dr. Zavajancic was coming to us from another district this year, and in the district he is leaving, he has 25 vacation days. I feel that I should have the ability to at least match that and not lower him in coming here because he may not take the job then. So it really does tie our hands.
I think this is like back to the audit though, like there needed to be some sort of written policy around these things so that it could be audited and not
Correct.
just like on a per person basis or whatever.
But I think taking out the discretion language didn't necessarily need to be there because of the audit. And Eric, from
So I
your,
see where you went.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know the difference between pre and post is.
yeah, but I
Um,
do think that Eric
and was the-
wasn't here for any of this discussion and giving his extensive experience, especially with non-certified and certified and also
I just want to be
police
clear, I'm
and fire.
thanking the policy committee because this has come up years ago. It then came up in the town audit, so it's a long time coming. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful that we're getting this on paper, don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to understand some of the nuance and what the discrepancies would be.
Ms. Jacobson, I also believe there was a degree of inconsistency.
Okay,
And so this is now trying to say, we're not going back and redoing all of that,
Right.
but going forward, here you go.
oh, okay, well then perhaps. she
That's where,
took-
as I said, that's where a lot of the conversation came up because at first we did not have that line. And
And
as
that's
we were,
not something we want to correct on the plus side. I'm just, that's behind the scenes. But that was just my understanding. And then just my last question is, was this done in collaboration with these individuals in terms of this policy, or was it just,
very much so.
okay, thank you.
It was from Dr. Parrish to Ms. Hardiman to Lisa in HR, where there was a lot of eyes on this.
Okay.
Because obviously the policy committee, honestly, we're just like, please tell us what the practice is. We just are looking to put it into policy. But I don't know if you wanted to provide, if you have any observations. I'm almost afraid to ask that, but go ahead.
Through the chair. So just to circle back with your question, board member, in regards to a date and before and after, that's typical standardized language that you typically see in collective bargaining agreements and policies in order to not impact the protected property rights or the benefits that you've already given hired employees before a certain date.
It does tell me something though.
Correct, right. And so I would agree with Superintendent Testani that you would want a runway in order to actually effectuate that and not impact property or benefits that have already been given or offered. I do want to bring to your attention just really quick page 2 of the policy. And I really feel like I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't just add this. I think the policy in of itself makes sense. I would probably just add after the part-time hourly employees pay time off section at the end there, the following language. The statute right now does not afford employees who are separating or terminated the payout of unused time. And it looks like you've summarized what the act does, but it ends off with employees shall be entitled to carry over up to 40 unused hours, accrued hours of PTO from year to year. It doesn't explicitly state that you cannot be paid that out upon separation. And so you would want to at least add the following language in order to not give other
Mr. Amano, may I
benefits.
ask you a question? Are you doing anything at 5 o'clock on Monday, August 31st?
What, at your discretion.
Fantastic. We are having a policy committee meeting at that time. So just so the board knows, I'll put this as a number, or actually, no, you're going to be fighting with Dr. Zavajanzik for the time, but
No
if it's okay with you, I'd like to
No
put this on the agenda.
That
We will
works.
amend it there. We'll add or make some alterations in blue, bring it back to the board. If you're comfortable with it, we'll vote it out. If you believe you need a postponement, we can treat it as a first read and move it along. So
Thank you.
August 31st, see you
No
there.
problem.
Okay. And I apologize as he's walking away. Did anybody else have any other questions? If anyone else has any, language changes, I've just notified you that this will be on our agenda for Monday then. So we can add that sentence or sentences that are needed. We can take a look at the dates and, any other questions? Okay. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
Yep, just a quick few things. For anybody still watching, we welcomed all our staff back officially today. We had a great convocation. I want to thank everyone who participated, especially Rachel Chapa and Meg Brown for organizing the event. Again, it was seamless. I also want to thank the members of the Fairfield Ludlow High School Singers who came and did an amazing performance. And a touching thank you to the teachers that they considered their hero in their time through the Fairfield Public Schools, whether it was at the elementary or middle school, elementary, middle, or high school level, which I found to be extremely heartwarming. It wasn't completely collaborated, but there was a common theme that went through the entire convocation in terms of the importance of all the staff and the impact that they have each and every day on our children. And then I want to thank Mr. Kendrick Moore, who was the keynote speaker, who did an absolutely amazing job. Again, tied it all back in together. So I just want to welcome everyone back officially one last time. And wouldn't be a school year officially starting without a board meeting. So thank you to everyone for giving up this night tonight, and let's keep the momentum going throughout the school year. Just to let everyone know, last year we had a little bit of a runway in our cell phone ban. There is no runway. The principals will be handing out on the first day of school the new pouches for those that need them. And then we'll be in full swing, so there won't be a month, a little over a month like we had last year. And as everyone is aware, we sent out a notification a few weeks ago that I believe was well received by our school community regarding the restrictions of e-bikes and e-scooters on Board of Education property unless you have a valid Connecticut driver's license. So, it's not going to stop everything. Similar to the cell phones, can't control what happens after school hours. But during the peak time of to and from school, we're going to limit the ability of students to be able to put themselves in harm's way when you have all the school traffic with cars, buses, and everything else that's going on around town. We also have now our 2 colleges back in session. So I think this is the right move before someone gets hurt or even worse. So, thank you.
I have a couple quick follow-up questions. First of all, the video of the heroes, could that be sent to the board?
Yeah, I remember last year if we videotaped the entire convocation. Let me ask if that was done this year. I know last year it was not.
Oh, that was part of speaking. That wasn't a video presentation?
No, we do have a video presentation. We can send that to the full
Okay.
board. That was played at the end. But yeah, the actual singers, before they performed, they went around, introduced
Gotcha.
themselves, what schools they attended, elementary, middle, and high school, and then the one teacher that was their hero. That
Very
was,
nice.
Yeah. I'm sure somebody videotaped it. It was
Thank you.
touching.
And then also I just wanted to follow up in terms of what kind of feedback have you gotten from the public regarding the e-bikes?
It's been all positive. I received one email from a parent that thought that we should not make a sweeping decision like this, that we should make it on an individual basis, which I don't know how we would do that. But everything else that I've heard from the public has been, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the superintendent's report? Okay, moving on to committee and liaison reports. Mrs. Jacobson.
I'm not sure if it's exactly liaison, but I'm going to do it anyway. In case everyone wasn't aware, the governor created a K-12 Blue Ribbon Commission last legislative session. They've been meeting since June. They've had 5 meetings. The next meeting is September 7th. And just to be clear, this specific commission is looking at school funding and accountability. If board members or members of the public haven't read everything, there's a whole website. They have recordings of every meeting, the minutes, and the presentations. I would strongly, strongly encourage for board members to at least watch the videos or read some of the presentations about some of the concepts that they're looking at in terms of, it started out with what are we doing right now, and now they're in collection of what's happening in other states in terms of how they allocate dollars or don't allocate, and what kind of policies would bring more accountability for those dollars and things like that. So I'm not going to get into too much detail. I just wanted to share that with the board that has been going on. They've had 5 meetings, and if you weren't so inclined to follow along, I know that I will. And then there's nothing yet to report. The report is due by January 15th, 2027, in time for the next legislative session. So can anticipate possibly something coming out of that in those areas. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Any others? Mr. Lee.
Yes, a report from the HVAC IAQ committee. Congratulations to Tomlinson students going in for their first day. You have air conditioning throughout the school. They are done. They have cleared out. They're still tweaking and cleaning out some stuff. It will take a couple of months for they're gonna balance out the air conditioner, and before you know, they'll be balancing out the heater. So if it's too hot in your classroom, tell your teacher, who'll tell whoever, and they'll work it out. But that project is, I don't want to say completed, but it is done. It is up and running. So we're there.
Thank you. Anyone else? Or I'm sorry, any questions? No? Any other committee and liaison reports? Seeing none. Open board comment. Mrs. Flynn.
Thank you. A huge thank you to the staff and Mr. Testani for what we heard was a wonderful convocation. I just want to throw out a quick thank you to all of our PTAs, who I know did a lot of hosting today and will continue to do a lot of hosting to reopen our buildings over the next 2 weeks. And I know that that's a large work that looks like it comes from nowhere, but it's a lot of very devoted volunteers. So a huge thank you to them.
Okay. Anyone else? I have a couple of things. One idea I wanted to run past the board as a heads up. And that is the idea that in conjunction with Mr. Testani's work with the e-bike regulation, I wanted to gauge, now again, it's only 6 of you, but 5 of you. I wanted to gauge your interest in my bringing forward a letter to the RTM regarding encouraging them to pursue an ordinance regarding e-bikes with regard to age, speed, guidelines for their use. Obviously, I don't have the wording in front of me, but if there is an appetite for such a letter, I wanted to just, before doing the work, I wanted to float if there's any opposition or anything you'd like to say about that. And again, normally open board comment is not the time for new topics, but if we pursued this, it would be an agenda item at our next meeting. So I just wanted to get a gauge of the board. Mrs. Flynn?
I gave enthusiastic support for this at leadership, so I'll open up that I think anytime the 9 of us can agree on a position statement to our other town bodies, especially when our students and staff are kind of in the paramount of it, I think we have a responsibility to do so. I did express that I wanted it to be something that we could all agree on, so I think we got a very good example from Ms. Jacobson with the POCD that kind of honed in on the things that we all agree on, and I think this subject, a lot of us agree on pretty simply. So absolutely.
Mrs. Bardenwerper?
I also enthusiastically would support this and agree. I was so excited at Mr. Testani banned them, during the school day. And I think that is just a great idea. So thank you for bringing that to us.
And obviously anyone can get back to me after this point if some thoughts occur to you later, since I'm springing it on you. But Mr. Krasnov?
I don't like the e-bikes and I think it's a great idea. However, I'm not sure it's really our venue to get involved at this point. I think when it comes to the schools, absolutely. But I think it's really the police that should be taking the lead on this. If they want our input, I think we should have input. But personally, I'm not sure if sending a letter from the board about something that happens outside of the school premise is really our purview.
And that can be something that the board decides. I think it would be a great encouragement, you know, and also I don't even want to assume necessarily that all RTM members are aware of the steps that Mr. Testani took. But I certainly think, because right now I know that there's nothing the police can do without that. But fair point. Mr. Lee.
I think it's a great idea. I think we're in charge or the children in the school. I like the kids to come back to school, right? And I think that's we talk about safety, it extends out from outside the school too. So I'm all for that idea.
Mrs. Jacobson, any reaction?
Do you have any, in general, yes, but do you have concepts around what an ordinance would be? Like, or is there some, are you going to work on some sort of a draft language?
Well, I
Or is it
very
just
big-
broad, like we encourage you to do it in ordinance and we leave it to you to do it?
correct, well,
What-
because that's where, to Mr. Krasnoff's point,
Okay.
that is absolutely where the
Okay.
police would need to be working with them. I'm not looking to partner with them. We obviously already have our, you know, rules in place, but encouraging them to pick this up as well. It was just
I
something
just
that,
wanted to make sure we weren't straying into
no, I'm
some-
not looking to get into the minutia of the details at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So we'll come up with something, probably run it past leadership next week. Got to talk to you about that. And so we'll see how the board feels about what we come up with then. Okay. Anything else? Sure.
For follow-up questions on waterfall/booklet, by when and to whom?
Yeah,
Okay,
Miss-
Monday?
Monday, okay. I thought Friday was.
You know what's happening tomorrow. Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry,
I'm
I'm
gonna
sorry,
spend
yeah,
Thursday
Monday.
crying, so
How
yeah.
about Tuesday?
Bye, thank you.
And I will be compiling all of the questions as well. So maybe actually, Mrs. Jacobson, I'll send them to you so you can reflect on if I got it comprehensively, all of the comments. So I'm going to be compiling all I was writing them all down as you and the ones Mrs. Flynn said and others have said as well. So, okay. That's it. So I would like to just also add my best wishes to the staff for an amazing year. The video presentation I made in speaking to them, since I had to be at school today, was this whole notion of created by culture. And I think that it's a phrase that really resonates with me. I think it's something that this board, you know, can work together and collaborate to set a tone for. And it's something that I hope permeates every aspect of the functioning of the district. So looking forward to a start of a great year. With that, public comment. There we go.
Mick McGarry, Fairfield Education Association. I just want to reiterate, it was a very great convocation. Glad to hear that the chair is up on their bloodborne pathogens, which is very important training
8
that
a.m. this
teachers
morning.
we look forward to every year. The speaker, the keynote speaker, was very motivational and inspirational, and we're hoping that that spirit will drive us through the entire year. So thank you for a great convocation, and we're all looking forward to having a wonderful year. Thanks.
And Mr. McGarry received his 25-year pin this morning. So congratulations to Mr. McGarry.
Okay, and with that, motion to adjourn. Mrs. Jacobson, seconded by Mrs. Flynn, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you.